Just before we get underway, we have a lot of fresh new faces in the room, so I should just outline the fire drill procedure. No test is expected, so if you do hear a fire alarm, please do assume it is the real thing. The escape route is through double doors and straight on through the next double doors and down the stone steps to the back of the building. You should walk across the inner car park to the evacuation point, which is the pavement opposite the police station, so out of the car park and across the road. Please do not use the lifts if we have such an event. And also, please do not re-enter the building until you're advised it is safe to do so. So we have a couple of formalities to deal with first as a committee. First of those is to confirm the minutes of the two previous meetings, which are before members. Both myself and Councillor Nye were present on those occasions. Are we happy that those are a true record, can be signed? Don't forgotten later. Done now. I should next ask if any of us present on the panel have any declarations of interest to make in respect to the matters before us today.
None.
Yep. Do I? And do we have any matters of urgent business that the panel needs to address? Thank you. In which case we turn to the main item on the agenda, which is the application for a premises license under Section 17 of the Licensing Act 2003 for Commodore's House in High Street, Cowes. Just before we get underway, again, for those who are not familiar with this chamber and how we operate, we have microphones, which is this black plastic monstrosity sat in front of you. Please, could you use the microphone whenever speaking? The button to press is the one on the right. Press it, it goes on like that. But please do use that because the meeting is being broadcast and recorded and your voice won't be picked up without the microphone. There is also a procedure outline. I think copies have been placed around the room. So it's that document. That is the procedure that the panel will be following today. I think the one thing that I will just underline is paragraph 2.1, which goes to the nature of the hearing. No party has the absolute right to cross-examine any other party. The hearing is in the form of a discussion led by the authority. Cross-examination shall not be permitted unless we consider it necessary to properly determine the determine the application. We will obviously try and give equal full time to all parties to present their case. Before one other matter, however, before we can commence the procedure, I understand that we have received very late representations past 5 o'clock last night.
Yes.
Which I've just been made aware of. Could you assist us, Gibson?
Yes, certainly. Just checking that's on. I can be heard. Good morning. I'm Jodie Gibson, senior lawyer for the Isle of Wight Council. A supplementary bundle was circulated just after 5 o'clock yesterday evening, which contains a number of additional emails and a photograph. Members will need to consider whether it's fair to admit this material, having regard to the timing and the opportunity for the parties to consider and respond to it. You may also wish to ascertain whether there is agreement as to its submission, although ultimately the decision is a matter for you. The bundle includes material from individuals who did not make representations during the consultation period, an indication from an individual that they wish to attend and speak today in respect of which I remind members that only parties have a right to address the subcommittee, and further technical comments from an individual who has previously provided evidence, but which does appear to introduce additional opinion at this late stage. If you are minded to admit the material, you should consider what weight can be properly attached to it, where it's late, untested, or not directly related to the licensing objectives. Thank you.
This is all material from the the respondent to the hearing.
That's correct.
Yes. Has the applicant been made aware of it? Given the lateness of the hour and the fact that the applicant has not been made aware of matters, we don't think it is fair to admit this material at this stage. You use your microphone.
Sorry. Philip Colvin representing Mr. Gosling here. There were two aspects to this. One was some individuals who wished to say some words. It's fine. You said it's late. There's no problem with that. But there's also a short addendum to Mr. Liner's report. The reason for that is that during the course of last week, I can't remember the exact date, we received an update from Mr. Orchard here. And because Mr. Liner had put in an expert report, his duty is to make sure that you know what his updated views are. So we were obliged to show what Mr. Orchard had said to Mr. Liner, and Mr. Liner has just done an update commenting on what Mr. Orchard said. Otherwise, the view I took was that you can't just produce the original expert report and then not have the expert follow through. So he has just commented on late technical information which came our way. I'm not going to detain you for hours over it, but it does seem right that you've got it in front of you. Otherwise, you've got an old view and not the updated view. It's only, I think, a one-page email.
Thank you for that. Obviously, we've literally just seen this, so gathering the nature of it is relying on what we're being told. Thank you for your clarification. That part of the new material. Is there something though that can be provided?
Yeah, I'm just sorry it hasn't been. I just don't know what the procedures were. I'm sure we can put a copy of this in the applicant's hands, and if they need us a few minutes, I don't think it's going to take.
Should we just have a brief adjournment so that can be done?
Chairman, I believe that Mrs. Bolter does have copies to circulate.
In which case, we'll just pause for a few minutes so that those copies can be handed over and you have the chance to read those.
Yes, it's a one pager on page B6.
Right. Well, we're adjourned for the moment, so we'll not do anything more formally until the opportunity to read that has been granted. Just so people are aware, it appears we're staying online for now, but anyone who's watching, the committee is not formally in session. Should we perhaps switch the thing off for a moment? Kat, should we switch off online? Just so discussions can be had. There. So just for clarification.
it's regarding this. It's wait.
So we are recommencing. The applicant and the panel have had a chance to read the permitted further documentation. I think there's a comment you wish to make, though, just before we proceed.
I just noted that this email that we're looking at is from the 11th of June and it's the 16th. So I just, if this is being submitted late, why it's taken 5 days for this to be submitted. It was submitted last night at 5 o'clock.
The point that's being made is, and I've certainly picked up on that, the email that's being submitted now is dated the 11th of June. So there has been a time lapse of some 5 days between that being received and passed on. I think that's a matter for comment and no more at this stage. Thank you for that. In which case, I think we are in a position to proceed. I do realise I haven't actually done introductions around the room, but I think everyone has a nameplate, but otherwise, please do introduce yourself when speaking for the record. If we sit here asking for everyone's name, it'll be another hour on the hearing. We won't want that. The first stage, if we follow the procedure, is for our licensing officer to summarise the report that is before us. Andrea.
Was submitted to the licensing authority on the 18th of March 2026 by Commodore's House Limited, a premises situated at 74 High Street, Cowes, Isle of Wight. The applicant describes Commodore's House as a wedding and events venue which is available for hire. The old boat store on the ground floor is used to host events, and Mr. Terry, the owner, resides above. The applicants state that the majority of bookings are made for events taking place between May and September, with bookings far less frequent outside of these time periods. Previously, events have taken place under the authorisation of temporary event notices. However, following inquiries made by the licensing team in October 2025 and subsequent discussions with the management team at Commodore's House, it was agreed that a premises licence should be sought in order to keep the responsibilities and control associated with providing licensable activities in-house and not with third parties hiring the venue. The original application requested that a premises licence be granted for recorded music and anything of a similar description from 9 AM until 11:30 PM, the supply of alcohol from 9 AM till 11 PM, and late night refreshment from 11 PM until midnight, each day with the premises open to the public until midnight. Consultation commenced on the 19th of March and ended on the 15th of April. During the consultation and in discussions with officers from the Environmental Health Department, revisions were made to the application. These revisions resulted in the removal of all regulated activities with the exception of the sale of alcohol. If a premises licence is granted, the applicant will retain the ability to provide live and recorded amplified music between the deregulated hours of 8 AM and 11 PM by virtue of the Live Music Act 2012, subject to the premises being open at the time for the sale of alcohol. Along with the revisions to timings and removal of activities, conditions were also agreed during the consultation period with Mr. Power from the Environmental Health Department and PC Buchanan from the police licensing team. Copies of the agreed conditions can be found at Appendix 4 and 5. For clarity, the Fire and Rescue Service confirmed during the consultation period that they had no representations to make in respect of this application. However, the committee has been provided with communications from Mr. Orchard, the Fire Safety Inspector, outlining the outcome of a fire safety audit, subsequent remedial works, and the position as of the 3rd of June 2026 regarding compliance. These can be found at Appendix 3 and 11. Mr. Orchard is present today, not as a party making a representation, but to assist the committee by providing factual information and professional clarification if required. He is not here to object to or support the application, and no new representations will be considered at this stage. If it assists you, you may invite Mr. Orchard to summarise his report and update you on any further visit he may have conducted since the 3rd of June. All parties may then ask questions for clarification at the Chair's discretion, and if permitted, any questions should be directed to matters already covered in the report and relevant to the licensing objectives. Mr. Power is also present today to assist the committee by providing factual information and professional clarification if required. PC Buchanan, whilst not present, has advised that if members require any clarification from him, then he can be here within 20 minutes. In respect of other persons, a total of 7 representations were received during the consultation period. These raise concerns in respect of the objectives of the prevention of public nuisance, public safety, and the prevention of crime and disorder. In respect of nuisance, residents state that the venue is a residential property and is not suitable for commercial use. They are concerned at the proposal to operate the ground floor as an events venue for up to 200 people every night. Concerns have been raised that access and egress from the property is via a narrow alleyway, and that this will lead to unacceptable levels of noise and disturbance from people when queuing for events and when congregating outside. Concerns have also been raised around people noise from groups gathering on the quay to the rear of the premises, and for noise to escape from the premises due to the large front and rear opening doors. The lack of parking outside for the movement of equipment and deliveries has also been raised as a source of nuisance. In respect of crime and disorder and antisocial behaviour, concerns have been raised regarding the lack of toilet provision at the venue. Residents believe that customers may use the surrounding area. Concerns have been raised around the lack of security at previous events and that this application only seeks to employ security at high-risk events. Additional concerns have been raised in respect of the use of glass. The application and agreed police conditions state that polycarbonate or toughened glass will be used at high-risk events, but these are undefined. In respect of public safety, concerns were raised around the safe evacuation of large numbers of people from the premises if the rear exit can no longer be used. Further concerns have been raised in respect of the safety of equipment being brought into the premises and the need for an electrical report, emergency lighting and an alarm system, as well as accessibility for wheelchair users. A document containing all of the representations received opposing the application can be found at Appendix 6. Cowes Town Council responded on the 3rd of April 2026, stating that they have no objection to this licence application. Confirmation of this can be found at Appendix 7. Following the consultation, all interested parties were contacted and provided with an overview of the comments from the Fire and Rescue Service. They were also sent the agreed police conditions and the communications from the Environmental Health Department showing the revisions to the application and their proposed conditions. A copy of this can be found at Appendix 8. Interested parties were asked to consider the information and to confirm whether the agreed police and EH conditions, along with the revisions to the application, had addressed their concerns sufficiently, and if on this basis they wish to withdraw their representation. All parties who replied confirmed that they wished their representation to stand. On Friday, the 17th of April, the applicant sent a letter to the licensing authority requesting that it be forwarded to the objectors. The letter provided some context to the application and advised that a decision had been made to restrict the number of guests attending events to 50. It also stated that in terms of entertainment, they would limit their music offering to a singer or someone playing the guitar, but would not permit a DJ. The letter was forwarded as requested to all objectors, and again they were advised to confirm if the contents of the communication satisfactorily address their concerns to the extent where they wish to withdraw their representation. This communication can be found at Appendix 9. However, on Monday the 20th of April, I was notified by the applicant that the revisions to the application had now been withdrawn following correspondence with one of the objectors' legal representatives. The applicant stated that they would be guided by the new fire safety risk assessment in terms of capacity, and that they felt the licensing authority, along with the responsible authorities, were best placed to grant or refuse permission and to decide which, if any, additional conditions should be applied to any licence granted, subject to a new maximum capacity assessment. The applicant also confirmed during this discussion that work was being undertaken to widen one of the exits in order to meet with fire regulations. On the basis of this information, further written communications were sent to the objectors, advising them of the applicant's decision, and a copy of this can be found at Appendix 10. A meeting to determine this application was previously opened on the 5th of May 2026 and immediately adjourned until today due to the availability of one of the objectors' legal representatives and the approaching elections held later that week. Since the adjournment, one of the objectors queried why several of the photos that they had submitted with their original representation had not been included as part of the report. It was explained that there were a number of people in the photo who could be identified and who hadn't given permission for their image to be included. The objector has since anonymised the photos, which show the proximity of people attending the venue in relation to his property, and Appendix 6 has now been amended to include these. Officers also met with representatives from the Planning Department on the 4th of June, who reiterated that their no comment position stands in respect of the application. They confirmed that there is no current investigation into the premises and that any concerns in this regard should be directed to them. Legal advice provided at the time confirmed that the planning and licensing regimes are separate and this should have no bearing on the determination of this matter. An updated plan of the premises has also been provided by the applicant, although it has since come to light that the doors in relation to the new fire doors are shown as opening inwards, and there are plans to submit an updated plan imminently. A bundle of evidence has also been submitted by Mr. Gosling's legal representative. Both of these were forwarded to all parties prior to the hearing today. Please also be advised that it was noted yesterday that an accompanying email provided at the time of the Environmental Health Department submissions was not included in the original pack. Officers feel that the recommendations made within the accompanying email, which were provided as general advice and recommendations, and were relevant to today's consideration, and they recommended an informal noise management plan. It also added a further addendum from the objectors team from Compliance UK, along with 2 further objections which have not been accepted. Part of the bundle of evidence submitted contains Mr. Colvin's skeleton argument. In it, he suggests that there has been a significant non-compliance with the authority's statement of licensing policy, primarily because a number of documents and policies were not submitted at the time of the application. Officers note the point raised regarding the absence of additional supporting documentation. However, there is no requirement for an applicant to provide evidence beyond the application and operating schedule. Section 182 Guidance 8.47 states that applicants are expected to provide licensing authorities with sufficient information in this section to determine the extent to which their proposed steps are appropriate to promote the licensing objectives in the local area. Parties are expected to work together in partnership to ensure that the licensing objectives are promoted collectively, and as is the case with many licence applications, collective working has taken place throughout the consultation period. Consideration has been given to the activities and the timings proposed within the application, as well as the measures put forward in the operating schedule. Discussions have taken place with the responsible authorities, conditions strengthened and added, assessments and surveys have taken place, and building works have taken place to achieve compliance. Limited documentation does not equate to a lack of proper consideration. The statutory guidance makes clear that the steps proposed in an operating schedule, which are translated into conditions on the licence, set the parameters within which the premises can lawfully operate. It is these conditions that set the operative control, not the wording of the operating schedule itself. All revisions to the application and operating schedule have been communicated to all parties throughout this process. And as the application stands today, the only matter for members to consider is whether or not to grant a premises licence for the sale of alcohol for consumption on and off the premises between the hours of 9 AM and 11 PM each day. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I should ask if panel members have any questions, clarifications.
No, none.
I assume that any other clarifications, etc., will be made during cases presented, but is there anything anyone feels they need to ask the licensing officer at this point? I wouldn't have thought so. Thank you. In which case we move to the applicant in this matter. If you could present your case, please, and if we could know your names for the record when
Thank you,
speaking.
Chair.
Thank you.
My name's Laura Jordan and I'm addressing the committee on behalf of, is that,
If you place the microphone a little bit closer.
it's quite close. Okay. My name is Laura Jordan and I'm addressing the committee on behalf of Mr. John Terry. I have a short statement from Mr. Terry, which I'd like to read for you. Commodore's House will be represented today by Laura Jordan. She has done an enormous amount of work supervising the building work in the venue and also developing the routines and policies to comply with the requirements. I have total faith in her ability to answer all the questions. She will be supported by Laurel Wibberley and Max Johnson, who can fill in information about events held in the past. I will not be coming to the hearing. Unfortunately, last year I had an incident and finished up in hospital and have been advised that I should avoid stress at all costs to avoid damage to my brain, so I shall be at home. I don't want you to think that this means I don't care. I care a lot because I want to use this venue to make a continued contribution to the community. Since becoming involved with Commodore's House, my role has been to review the issues that have been identified by responsible authorities and local residents, work with the owner and relevant professionals, and ensure that proper measures are put in place to address those concerns. I have extensive experience in operational management and remain committed to supporting Commodore's House throughout this application and thereafter. Before turning to the specific measures that have now been put in place, I would like to acknowledge something I feel is important. There have been events held at Commodore's House in the past where, with the benefit of hindsight, management arrangements could have been stronger, and some of the systems, procedures and documentation that are now in place did not exist. I do not stand before the committee suggesting that everything has always been perfect. I fully recognise that the concerns raised by neighbouring residents are important and should be taken seriously, particularly in relation to noise, public nuisance, fire and public safety, security and the management of events. I do not look to dismiss those concerns. However, I do want to explain the current position because a number of the objections and evidence were prepared based on information that is no longer current. The position today is therefore very different from that described in a number of those objections. I have recently met with a number of the neighbours to discuss this application, explain the improvements being made and answer questions about how the venue would operate in practice. The purpose of those conversations was not to persuade people to withdraw their objections. It was simply to listen, to understand concerns and where possible to address them. Some of those discussions were positive and constructive, others were less productive. However, the important point is that Commodore's House has not sought to ignore or dismiss concerns. We have actively engaged with them as best we can. This approach reflects how we intend to continue operating in the future by communicating with neighbours, responding to concerns where they arise and working constructively with the local community wherever possible. The committee has seen in the documentation from objectors references to Mr. Terry being 84 years old. That is almost correct, he's 83. However, I would respectfully suggest that this point cuts both ways. Mr. Terry is not seeking to create a nightclub. He's not seeking to create a late night entertainment venue operating every day of the year. He is a long-standing resident with a deep personal connection to this historic property who wishes to continue using it for weddings, celebrations, exhibitions and similar events in a safe, structured and properly managed way. Indeed, many of the activities being criticised are activities that have taken place at the property for many, many years and which have been attended and enjoyed by members of the local community, including some of those now objecting to the application. I would also like to address the suggestion that Commodore's House has no staff or management structure. Whilst Commodore's House may not employ a large PAYE workforce, the venue is not operated by Mr. Terry alone. There are experienced individuals working with and on behalf of Commodore's House, including those responsible for event management, operational oversight, compliance, and health and safety. Since the application, significant work has been undertaken at the premises to meet the requirements set out by Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service. This has included a new second fire escape route, improvements to the current fire alarm system, additional firefighting equipment, improvements to the emergency light system, all relevant fire-related signage, and an updated fire risk assessment. The premises has been inspected several times throughout this period of works, and it is our understanding that these inspections have resulted in a satisfactory report from Mr. Graham Orchard. In addition, a fire safety policy and evacuation procedure have been developed, and these were made available during all fire-related inspections. Furthermore, a substantial amount of work has been undertaken to develop formal policies and procedures for Commodore's House. A number of these address the conditions set out by the police and environmental health, such as a dispersal policy and a CCTV policy. The dispersal policy sets out how we will manage disturbance during and after an event and includes measures to encourage the quiet departure of guests, management of all external areas, and the monitoring of guest behaviour during departure. In addition to the requirements set out by responsible authorities, a comprehensive suite of policies and procedures have now been developed covering areas such as noise management, antisocial behaviour, complaints handling, contractor management, and event safety. Supporting inspection and monitoring systems have also been introduced to ensure those procedures are followed in practice. All of the suppliers used by Commodore's House are now subject to the acceptance of our policies and procedures and are required to submit relevant and supplier-specific certificates and training records. Similarly, terms and conditions given to future clients will also include relevant policies and procedures and will require their acceptance of these prior to the event taking place. The applicant accepts that effective management is essential. That is why substantial work has been undertaken to introduce these measures and to ensure that future events are managed in a way that is effective and with the local community in mind. We have not sought to add those documents to an already substantial hearing bundle, particularly given the volume of material already before the committee. However, those documents do exist and they form part of management arrangements that are now in place. They are available for inspection by the relevant responsible authorities should they wish to review them, and we would welcome that scrutiny. We would also welcome any further visits by environmental health, the police, or other relevant officers to review the measures that have now been implemented. Before I conclude this part of my submission, I would respectfully ask the committee to look at the application in its simplest form. Commodore's House was advised to apply for a premises licence. That application was made. Concerns were then raised by responsible authorities and local residents. Those concerns have been considered carefully and significant work has been undertaken to address them. Whilst I do not seek to minimise the concerns that have been expressed, I would suggest that the key question for the committee is whether the premises, as it stands today, can operate in a manner that promotes the licensing objectives. It is our submission that it can. The measures now in place directly address public safety, the prevention of crime and disorder, the prevention of public nuisance, and the protection of children from harm. We have not ignored concerns, we have responded to them. We have not resisted scrutiny and we have engaged with it. And we remain willing to continue working with responsible authorities to ensure that those standards are maintained going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Do your colleagues wish to add anything to that, or is that the case? Okay, members of the panel, any questions?
No questions.
I'll have one.
Sure.
Councillor Stephen Reynolds, I'd like to ask, having run similar venues, when you talk about high risk and low risk, Can you explain to me what would be considered your high-risk clientele?
So we've introduced a security assessment form. So before any event, we have an assessment form, and within that assessment form, it takes into account the age of people attending the event, the number of people, what the event is, and it uses it based on the outcome of that will determine whether we decide that there is no security needed, whether there's 1, 2, 3 or more. So prior to this, that assessment never happened, but that assessment will happen. So it's based on a number of factors: who's attending the event, what the event is, what suppliers will be on site.
So just to confirm, you're not planning to run, let's say, dance events as such? You're just
Dance
sort of
events.
like hardcore, that sort of type
No,
of, it's
no.
going to be, yeah, that's what I
Just
wanted to
clarify,
clarify. Yeah.
this space is for weddings, family celebrations, exhibitions, evening talks. There are no dance.
Thank you for
nightclubs.
clarifying that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is one question I was going to ask. Would it, given what you've just said, what would actually be a high risk event for you? Could you actually give an example? It sounds as if it would be a rare thing.
I think when we say high risk, I think if our numbers were at capacity, and there is no plan to have our numbers at capacity, even though the licence may grant that. If we were at full capacity, we might deem that to be high risk because the building is busier. The age demographic, if it is a party full of 21-year-olds, we may decide that we need some further security. It's very difficult to answer that without being quite ageist. I don't want to suggest that a party of 21-year-olds is more high risk than a party of 65-year-olds drinking alcohol. So
We'll probably find out at the festival this weekend.
quite possibly.
Thank you for that. Just a couple of other points. The couple of references have been made to capacity. What is the actual capacity that is proposed for events?
So that depends whether it's seated, or whether there is no seating. So it's and obviously there is staff involved in there. So there's 200 for standing and 130, but that's including staff. And I would like to point out, and the same applies for the 7 days a week. The 7 days a week and that capacity does not necessarily mean that Mr. Terry is going to, he has every right to say no to a booking inquiry if he doesn't want it. It's not too open 7 days a week, but if a wedding guest wants to get married on a Wednesday, we don't want to say they can't get married there on a Wednesday because we don't have a license. And the capacity is the capacity, not necessarily that we've said we want. It's a capacity that the fire inspection have said is appropriate based on the venue. That doesn't mean that we will have 200 guests.
And you said the number would include staff. So if you were up to
10
200, that would include the 10 staff. So it's
I
actually a
can
capacity
refer
event.
to the FRA and come back to Chair on the exact figure because it's potentially slightly more with staff.
And again, you've sort of touched on this, but if you're able to clarify a little more, what is the anticipated frequency of events, both generally and perhaps how it might alter during the year? Can you give any flavour of that?
I think it's fair to say during the summer months, it's always more appealing. We have large events in Cowes. So during those summer months, May to September, it would absolutely be busier than the winter months. But that
Are you able to say how many? I mean, Cowes Week is Cowes Week, but maybe that's particular to Cowes Week. But perhaps during the summer months, would you anticipate 1, 2, 3 events a week? Are you able to give any sort of?
I don't think I can't give you an exact figure. I don't believe that we would have more than 2 or 3 bookings a week in a normal, and I think that that's a maximum. During some busy periods, as I've just touched on Cowes Week, that might be slightly different, but in the main, I don't believe we'd be having more than 2 or 3 a week at the very most.
And so just a couple other things. An updated plan has been referred to as on its way, but not available yet. Is it possible to just outline what
So
will be seen in the changes?
Yeah, the plan that's been submitted is up to date, other than the doors. Unfortunately, the plan has been drawn with the doors the wrong way. So the plan at the moment, the new fire escape route, the doors come inwards. So there are two things. There's a solution to the doors. There will always be security on site until such point that the doors are changed and that section is resolved. So in the event of a fire alarm system, there is a security that is employed purposely to stand on that door, and those doors will be latched open, so they can't be closed. If the premises licence is granted, the plan is to put an internal lobby in that second fire escape with a fire door that's pushed open, and then the main doors can remain open. Mr. Terry has spent quite a lot of money and resource and time making adjustments. We're prepared and happy to put that further adjustment in. The solution at the moment is that those doors will be dealt with by someone who's on security. So going back to your security question, even if it's a low risk event, until that section is done, there will be security on those doors.
And pleased to hear last question from me at this point. Reference has been made to noise management and a noise management plan. Can you give a little more clarity on what is in existence or proposed?
So the noise management plan is putting things in place that have not been there before. So for example, we have a dispersal policy, and that talks about what times guests will leave, what the security and what the staff will be responsible for doing. That is a very different position to what has happened in the past. There's CCTV monitoring, there's signage, all of those things kind of make what our noise management policy is. We can't eradicate noise. That's not what the noise policy is there to do. It's not there to say there will be no noise from the premises. It's there to manage that, and that hasn't been done in the past, and we've accepted that, which is why that policy is now in place.
And will that include any monitoring of any sort?
Monitoring in a way of we will monitor it. There is no noise monitoring equipment in the building.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And I should also, bearing in mind what we said about the purpose and manner of this hearing earlier, and obviously the fact that cases will be presented in due course, are there any questions seeking clarification from the applicant from other parties?
It's just not my practice to, but I'm going to make comment, obviously, during my submissions.
Thank you very much. We move then to responsible authorities. I did note that PC Buchanan could attend if required. Perhaps, as we have Mr. Power and Mr. Orchard here, I could ask at this stage, does anyone think they would require the attendance of PC Buchanan? Because we could give us a chance to get him here.
I have to say that normally if reps aren't made, then the authorities don't speak, but maybe there's a local practice here that I'm unaware of. Because
the police have provided conditions.
Yes.
So PC Buchanan is available, it seems, if he is required.
Certainly, I wouldn't be requiring him.
Standing down. In which case, can we turn to, I don't know who's going first, Mr. Power?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Give you a bit of an overview, and I'll also welcome any questions thereafter.
Again, I suspect the same comments are going to be made about volume and microphones. Let's keep it as close as comfortable. Yep, and we can't hear you because you're not using your microphone. Sorry.
You're quite right, Chairman. I can't hear a thing that people are saying because they need to speak up because we're in a large room.
They also move their microphones closer to their mouth because they're standing right back and I can't hear 80% of what's being said. let me put that on so that you can hear me. Could they move their microphones closer to their mouth so that everybody has a chance to understand what's being said?
I think the point has been made now. Could everyone be conscious? I don't know if there's any ability to turn things up. We do tend to get feedback a bit if, but that can be cured by having microphones closer to the source of the sound. So okay, so do it myself. So yeah, if everyone could be conscious of the microphones, and I will, if necessary, call people out if I think they're being a bit too quiet. I should also just remind parties that Mr. Power and Mr. Orchard have not made objection representation as such, but are here to provide information and to be asked for any questions to clarify that information. That's their role here today. Mr. Power, nice and close to the microphone.
On that basis, I think I'll hold off for now and welcome any questions at the point of considering potential conditions or any actions thereafter. Any direct questions?
Okay, well, that is the point we are at in that case. So again, I should ask the panel if there are any questions relating to what you have seen from Mr. Power. No. And again, of the objectors? No. That was easy. So, Mr. Orchard.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Graham Orchard. I'm a warranted fire safety officer with Hampshire and Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service. My role in this is as a fire service licensing officer to review the premises license application and carry out an inspection. The service policy is to carry out that inspection under our legislation, which is the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005, which is the primary fire safety legislation in this country. So I carried out an inspection under that, taking into account the Licensing Act requirements as well, because there are some specific requirements that licensing require. I carried out an audit on the 30th of March. You have information in your pack. I then re-inspected on the 3rd of June because there were some works highlighted. All those works were completed. However, on that follow-up inspection, I noted the building works that were underway to create the second means of escape. On my first inspection, I was not happy to accept the second means of escape that the fire risk assessor had identified. That led to the 60 people restriction on the use of the premises. On my follow-up inspection and the building works, I then spoke with the representative from Commodore's House to understand exactly what work was being carried out, and then arranged to carry out another inspection when the work was completed. The reason for me being here today is that I did revisit last week on Wednesday, and I wish to give the committee the current fire safety arrangements that are in place in Commodore's House and whether or not they are satisfactory. So my visit on the 10th of June, I can confirm some of the information that the Commodore's House representative has outlined. There is now a mains powered fire alarm system in place with a 2-zone system with a panel. It has automatic fire detection throughout all of the ground floor, linked to the residential accommodation above with sounders and detectors above. There are break glass call points now by every exit. The fire alarm system is monitored, and just to explain what that means, when the fire alarm is activated, a call is automatically relayed to an alarm receiving centre, which is a remote centre, who then call the company on a nominated phone line, which I understand during events will be the designated premises supervisor, to confirm whether the alarm requires the attendance of the fire service. And if not, and it's a false alarm, then the call is not relayed to the fire service. If there is a fire, that call is relayed and a fire service response is activated to that monitoring arrangement. And there is also, and I've seen the document under the fire safety policy, that a 999 call will be made as well. So there's sort of two ways of calling the fire service. Emergency lighting has been mentioned. That is now installed throughout. I have seen records of the testing since the fire alarm has been installed and extended, of the weekly testing of the fire alarm and the monthly testing of the emergency lighting. I'm waiting for certification of the installation of the new extended fire alarm and the emergency lighting, which will come in due course from the contractors. So that is something I am waiting for. There are suitable fire extinguishers. We have two separate fire exit routes that are separated with fire doors and fire resisting construction, and I'm happy that those two routes do give alternative exits from the building. There are maintained illuminated exit signs over each exit, which is a requirement for the license, and there are directional exit signs throughout the building leading to those exits. The two new fire doors, when I visited, was just the final alterations were being made. So I didn't see them fully installed. However, again, I'm waiting for a certification from the fire door installer to confirm everything is installed to the correct standard. I've seen management documents that were referred to. I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen some of them, including the fire evacuation procedure, terms and conditions that go to the hirers, outlining their responsibilities, outlining the fire safety arrangements that they have to sign up to use the venue. There are fire action notices by every call point, as they should be, giving instructions to everybody on what to do in the event of fire, or if they need to set the alarm off. The other things I know are in place and I think are relevant. The same bar company will be used for all events, I have been assured, and the same designated premises supervisor. For me, that gives me a bit of reassurance that there will be consistency, that the bar company will know the layout, they'll know the procedures. Some of the staff, if not all the staff, will probably be the same ones used for all events. That gives me confidence that we're not using lots of different companies and we're not dealing with new people who don't know the venue. A concern was raised about the resident, Mr. Terry, and his safety. In terms of that, I think the work to separate the two escape routes and the fire compartmentation that's been carried out, the early warning with the fire alarm coverage throughout the whole building, will mean that if there is an issue, he will have very early warning. He'll be able to come down, and his door is within a few meters of the entrance door to the premises, which I think is acceptable for him to exit the premises safely. And although that's not part of the license, it needs to be considered. In summary, really, from what I've seen and heard from Commodore's house, and I've seen an awful lot of work carried out, I'm happy that everything is following a path to achieve the sort of capacities that are listed in the new fire risk assessment. I should refer to that. I have seen that document. The calculation numbers are accurate based on the floor space and the exit widths that are available. The thing I need to comment on is the inward opening entrance door set within a sliding door. I know this is going to be an issue for noise, for that door to be held open, the sliding door. Therefore, the management procedure that I've read is that security will be on that door and that will open that door in the event of a fire. Ideally, that door should be open all the time. However, as a management process to guarantee that door will be available and open, manning it is acceptable under our legislation, because management processes that reduce the risk are acceptable. And with the guarantee that that will be in place, I would accept that door as being acceptable for means of escape, and therefore the numbers of 200 maximum. And just to confirm, that would include staff, would be acceptable. If you have any questions, obviously I'm happy to answer them if I can.
Just a very quick one. The door you mentioned being manned, would that be not better if that was automated and connected to the fire alarm system? Because should there be a problem, security will almost, it's in their nature to go and investigate. So should the fire alarm go off, it would be, be more appropriate if that door was actually automated.
Yeah, I think there's two issues there. Firstly, I think the security role would need to be very clear in that their role is to open that door primarily and then investigate. Yes, you're right. A lot of premises have automated exit doors which default to open when the fire alarm activates. So that could be considered in the future, but that is an expensive option.
Yeah.
But yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And just one from me. We talked about that door that be manned. You referred to the other doors and waiting for certification on those. I think you implied it, but can you just clarify the plan in relation to those doors? If that is certified, you are happy with that arrangement?
Yes, the arrangement that was outlined, those doors are currently inward opening. They either need to be held open with a security in place, or they need to be recessed so that the outward opening, so that the inward opening doors can be permanently held open. And then there will be a set of outward opening doors in a lobby that will then mean the doors open outwards with a push bar, and therefore they wouldn't actually need to be manned once we get to that point. But the current arrangement is to supervise and open those doors.
Thank you for clarifying that. Are there any questions?
Literally, just for clarification, so I can understand. Morning, Mr. George. Just so I can get it clear, that the main front door is a big old 100-year-old slidey door, and then within it, there's set an inward opening ordinary door. And is that the door you're thinking should be manned at all times?
That door needs to be manned and slid open, and the other doors that have been, they're the final exit doors from the new exit route. They are double doors and they currently open inwards, so they would have to be held open. So there's two
They'd
separate
have to be
doors.
open at all times.
They would, or the same management procedure in place. So it will depend on the restrictions for noise control or for any other. Ideally, I would like those doors open, but I will accept a management procedure to open them on activation of the fire alarm.
So it's this interplay between doors open, better for fire, worse for noise.
Yes, it's a balance.
Okay. And you'll tell me, you're the expert. You discount the larger exit for calculation purposes.
That's
and
correct.
The larger exit is the new double doors, inward opening double doors.
Well, it depends whether you count the space when the door is slid open on the initial exit, or whether you look at the new one. If we discount the new one, then the capacity will still be 200 people.
As long as the big door is slid open.
Yes.
So you need somebody, if it's a 10-hour party, you need somebody stood there and on the other exit for 10 hours.
Yes, or they swap. It'd be easy to do that.
But you need, for the security primary role, I think you've described it, on both those exits, is to stand there in case of the need for emergency escape.
Yes, I think they would have other roles on the doors.
Yes.
We've
door-like roles.
It's been mentioned about people leaving the premises to smoke, for example, and then return. These will be events that are controlled. People can't just walk in, as I understand it. So therefore, those security officers would have other roles as well.
Okay. And in your very helpful updated letter, you mentioned you didn't know what the building control situation was, whether building regulations application had been made.
That's not for me to comment.
Not for you.
No.
But you also said you couldn't yet certify that the regulatory fire safety order had been complied with.
No. So the items outstanding on my last inspection last Wednesday is an electrical installation condition report. So that's a mains wiring condition report, and that is purely because some work has been carried out on the mains electrical wiring, so a new report needs to be issued. So
Yeah.
that is required. I need certificate of compliance for the fire alarm and the emergency lighting to comply with British Standard 5839 and British Standard 5266 for those installations. I need to see any portable appliance testing records if any small appliances are in use at the premises. No gas safety certificate is required as far as I'm aware, because the gas cooker that was installed has been removed. There is no kitchen, there is no cooking.
There's no
The
kitchen or
gas,
cooking in the premises.
not in the, no. This is where the situation has changed.
Okay.
There was an area that was used for preparation of food. That area is now gone.
There's no prep area, no mechanical ventilation, fumes, odours, but there's no prep area.
As I understand it, and I perhaps
We'll pick that up.
would direct you to the applicant, but
Yeah.
I believe any food is brought into the premises already prepared.
Okay. Okay.
The two fire doors, I'm just waiting for certification from the fire door installer to confirm that the hinges are fire rated, the ironmongery, the door closers, the latching mechanism, everything complies with the standard, because we don't accept anything unless we see the evidence of compliance. And I also need to see a few more of the management documents, which outline those arrangements, which we talked about with the security officers. I've seen testing records, I'm happy with those for the fire alarm and emergency lighting, and I'm happy that the extinguishers are serviced within their test date. So those are the things I'm waiting for. There's nothing structural. There is nothing physical that has not been completed.
All right.
To
So
my
that's extremely
satisfaction.
helpful, and the subcommittee will be very reassured that you exist.
Well, just to say, I will be carrying out a further inspection.
Yes.
And in my view, I wouldn't want any events to take place until I've carried out that inspection.
Right, so that was really what I was going to ask you. The way this is normally dealt with, when there's a whole bunch of technical stuff which still needs to be done, that may not be in principle stuff, but it's important technical stuff, is just to have a works condition that says there needs to be a sign off before the venue is operated.
It is literally to see the certification of the works that have been completed. I've seen them completed. I just need the expert to tell me they've been done to the correct standard.
So that you can sign it off.
And then I would be happy to sign
from a
off.
fire perspective.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you very much. So we now move to what is listed here as other persons. So it's a slightly derogatory term, but can I just clarify, we've had a number of representations from people, and I'm thinking some are here today. Who are the speakers in this part of the hearing? Obviously, Mr. Colvin, I'm expecting to hear from you. Yeah.
And I'm going to ask Mr. Fumicelli, who's the noise expert, to speak. And then I'll allow others sitting here to introduce themselves.
Okay. Are there any
I mean,
others?
Mr. Gosling is here to answer questions, but I'm going to speak on his behalf.
Okay, so we have yourself, Mr. Colvin, Mr. Fumicelli. Are there any other persons?
My name is Craig Wilson Smith, and this is my wife. We live at 77 High Street in Waterfront House and are directly involved with the proximity of Commodore's house.
No one else?
You've also got Victoria Wyatt online. Did have. Okay.
Yes, I'm online and listening, ready to speak at the appropriate time.
Put your microphone on. Can you put your microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I'm old and I'm deaf. I'm sorry.
I was just listing the speakers I have, and we'll take it in this order. Mr. Colvin, Mr. Fumicelli, yourself, Mr. Wilson Smith, and Ms. Wyatt, who is online. There was one other anticipated speaker online, but she does not appear to be present in the meeting.
I can give you some information on that if you would like. She's currently abroad, but we purchased the building in 2009 with Mrs. Wyatt, and she lived there for a period of 5 or 6 years.
And Miss Wyatt is available. It's Miss Gorman.
I'm sorry?
Miss Gorman, I was referring to, is the one who we're not seeing today on screen. Okay. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I did register to speak. Just to make a very brief statement.
Mr. Hollis, you didn't actually provide any representation, so I don't think that is possible.
We did because we said no objection to the licensing as Cowes
Are you
Town Council.
appearing as the representative of Cowes
I'm
Town
the chairman
Council today?
of Cowes Town Council.
Are you appearing as the representative of the town council?
Yes.
Right. So bear with me a second.
Just for clarification, Councillor Hollis, in your email that was circulated yesterday evening, you did actually said that you'd be speaking in your own right,
Yes.
not
Yes,
representing
my
the
own
town
right
council.
as chairman of Cowes Town Council licensing. I can explain. It's very simple. That at the end of our last council meeting, because, well, I'm not telling you what I'm going to say. Because this meeting, our meeting was so long ago, it was well before any objections came through. And I cleared it with the Cowes Town Council at our meeting last week that I would be coming here to just explain that is why we raised no objection. And perhaps we might have done something else, but I can only speak to myself on that, Mr. Chairman, not for the other members of the committee.
Right, so Councillor Bacon, I'm hearing there that I understand your explanation, but that you are speaking on your, again, as you put in your email, you'd be
That's
speaking
fine.
in your own right rather than
Yes.
representing the town council. So not speaking on behalf of the town council. And having not made a representation in your own right, therefore not part of the proceedings. Okay.
Thank you, Gibson. Yes, I think that I'm afraid that has to be the position, given the explanation you've given. So,
Chair, if I may, Mr. Sheldon has nominated Mr. Gosling to speak for him, and whether that translates to Mr. Colvin will be representing Mr. Sheldon. Just for the record, he has asked for representation here today, so.
perhaps that's just as well that wasn't on the microphone. And can I just confirm, we have, as has been referred to before, received the extensive bundles of information which include all the representations. So even those who are not, who are speaking through others or who are not able to attend today, we have read the representations, and we have, of course, read the extensive skeleton argument as well. I think we are fully briefed on all matters in there, but we can now turn to such representations as you wish to make further to and on top of those.
Thank you very much indeed, and I'm not going to keep you for a huge amount of time. I've already assured Mr. Winchcombe of that matter. I can see it's a very experienced subcommittee, and I'm very grateful for the indication that you've read the skeleton argument and Mr. Gosling's submission. So I will just try and touch on some of the key points, and of course we're here to answer questions. And I'm also going to let Mr. Fumicelli loose to explain his independent noise assessment in this particular case. So can I just start in this way? There's a very famous case, which all your lawyers will tell you about, called Hope and Glory, in which the Court of Appeal said that licensing is about making evaluative judgments about what is reasonably acceptable in particular places. And that won't come as a surprise to you. You've got to evaluate. And it's an evidential hearing. No one's obliged to produce any material at all. We've chosen to produce quite a lot. But it's up to the applicant, who's got the burden here, to decide what they're going to produce. Your policy gives them a whole bunch of guidance about the sorts of things that you might like to see. And if they don't produce evidence, well, it's very difficult for you to make findings. It's entirely up to them, but it's a democratic hearing in which cards are laid on the table and in advance, and that is what we have sought to do. Now, I represent, as you know, principally Mr. Gosling, and his house, the old post office, is, to use the applicant's own language from its social media, is tucked away. It's one of a line of homes, and it looks out over the very beautiful River Medina and enjoying the sights and sounds which that brings. And if, like me, you were lucky enough to be standing on his amenity space at 8 o'clock last night, you can hear nothing. A bit of wind, you might hear a bit of wind, you might hear a little bit of tinkling from boats moored, the red funnel, hear a little growl coming along periodically, but it is an entirely tranquil location. And you, sir, as citizens of this beautiful island, might also enjoy living in a tranquil row of houses. And if your neighbour threw a party for their anniversary or their kid's birthday, or whatever it might be, you wouldn't mind too much because it goes with the territory, doesn't it? And they might hold a little reception for a local charity or a dinner, and you wouldn't mind too much because that is very much about living in a community. But then they might form a company and list it on the company's register as a licensed restaurant. Well, that might just concern you a little bit. And then they might create a website and advertise it as a wedding and events venue. Now your antennae go up. And then they say, well, they're happy to erect a marquee on the quay, directly adjoining your amenity space where you love to sit with your family, your doors open, just enjoying the sights and sounds of the sea. And then they partner up with a mobile bar company, clearly a professional outfit that's going to run events 2 or 3 times a week, we hear, from May to September, although the license goes far beyond that. And their experience is that when these larger, more commercial events are run, it disturbs them. And it would disturb them, wouldn't it? Because if you had a DJ running or a sound deck, and you had an amplified band with your neighbour 2 or 3 days a week with customers coming out into the garden right next to yours, of course you are going to be disturbed. You almost don't need Mr. Fumicelli to tell you, but he's here to explain to you as an independent acoustic advisor that you would be disturbed. And all of that by the by, and I'm not going to detain you with all this, without planning permission, without building regulations consent, with any kind of noise management plan, with any kind of dispersal plan, without any aircon, which is rather important, isn't it, in the summer, because it means there's going to be a will for people to throw open doors and windows, without any adequate WCs, without venting of the WCs, without facilities for disabled people, all the things which you might normally expect a commercial premises to enjoy, these premises do not enjoy. So Mr. Gosling kicks up last October, and he starts writing to all and sundry, and that prompts 2 things. Prompts officers talking to Commodore's house and saying, don't you think you should try and regularize this a bit and put in a license application? So that happens, and it prompts that communication. And Mr. Orchard's done a great job in trying to get the fire aspects of the premises, which has operated without proper fire precautions for the last 10 years. He's managing piece by piece to get that in order. Congratulations to Mr. Orchard, because we all read about the terrible tragedies which happen when fire is not looked after properly. But Mr. Gosling's main concern is noise, because he's used to this beautiful, tranquil location, and now he's going to have a commercial events venue bang next door, front and back. So he puts in a proper objection, it's fully fleshed out, it's all explained. And then in mid-April, an offer comes direct to him, but also comes via the council. Look, We've obviously got off on the wrong foot. We really only want to be low key. We'll restrict numbers to 50 people, and we won't have DJs and loud, live amplified music and all of those sorts of things. It's fine. Get back to us. The very following day, the working day, the offer is withdrawn, meaning that the applicant wishes to put in as many people as they can get in there, which turns out to be 200, and they intend to use DJs in a row of tranquil houses. And that is in an old building without noise insulation. We'll come to that. Without any acoustic lobbies, and critically, without aircon. And that means we have hot summers these days, and they're getting hotter, as you know. Those doors will be thrown open, people will be in and out to the quay, in and out to the alley, and Mr. Gosling, his piece will be severely affected. And this comes to you this morning, despite objections lodged 2 months ago, without a noise management plan. Insulation, noise limitation, types, bass, mounting of speakers, all the things you would expect of any other commercial premises on your island, do not have here. And when you ask about what's in the noise management plan, you're told, well, we're not going to have any noise monitoring. And we'll think about dispersal. Although it exists, this plan, we're not producing it. And so, obviously, no applicant's bound to put in anything. They can put in a little operating schedule, ignoring all the things you have in your policy about what you expect to see, including matters of noise. And they can read the representations and they can decide not to put in any evidence to meet the legitimate concerns of Mr. Gosling and his neighbours. But that's a risk, because if they don't, then Mr. Gosling is entitled to say they haven't made their case. You cannot find it's appropriate to promote the licensing objectives, to waive the application through when there's no noise management plan, and certainly none that you have seen. So I hope that you can understand Mr. Gosling's concerns, which I've just tried to outline. They are perfectly justified concerns. Mr. Gosling has lived here for 33 years. He's loved this community. He's loved living in Cowes. And he just wants to retain a modicum of peace in his later years. So I'm going to summarize the case. I'm going to explain what we're asking you to do. And then I'm going to say some words about the location of this corner of Cowes that you're concerned with, a little bit about the history, the application and its many deficiencies when judged against your policy, and then the key question, which I do not wish to lose sight of. I don't want this to be a technical hearing, a legal hearing, or anything like that. The key question of noise. And then I'm going to make submissions about the proper disposal of this case, which I will telegraph to you now, which is you just don't have the info. It ought to be refused. Terry can come back if he's sorted out some of these key issues. But if you're not going to refuse it, then there are some base level, minimum level conditions which you ought to attach to the license, which are on page A21 of the supplemental bundle. But I'll finish with that list of conditions. So first of all, just a quick summary. We're asking you to refuse the application because it is the wrong building, it's in the wrong place. The application is not supported by basic material, including material required by your policy, principally, in Mr. Gosling's case, sound, and the conditions proffered fall well short of anything which could meet the obvious concerns with this application. So it's the 4 points: wrong building, wrong place, lack of supporting material, and insufficient conditions. And enlarging on that just slightly, it's the wrong building, principally because it is not acoustically sealed, and there are no acoustic lobbies, meaning that noise leakage will be a constant issue, exacerbated by the fact there's no aircon. You put 200 people in that little space, 13 by 8 meters or something, they'll be in and out, smoking, drinking, socializing, getting a breath of air, and every time the door opens, the music streams out. It's in the wrong place because it's in a quiet residential corner of Cowes. It's hemmed in by a number of dwellings, and its exterior amenity spaces, as I'm going to show you, front and rear, are directly adjacent to, underneath residential space, habitable rooms and exterior amenity space. It just couldn't be worse from that point of view. And I'll show you the photographs. And as I've said, a lack of evidential material, and the conditions, even as supplemented by agreement with officers, do not begin to answer the key difficulty in this case, which is noise. So that really sets out the stall, and I want now just to take you straight to the location, because essentially the location is absolutely at the heart of this. So if you would mind turning into the supplemental bundle at page A191. And that's pretty much the view you get from the ferry as it comes in, as you no doubt know. And Commodore's house is the pink building. And immediately to its right is Mr. Gosling's property, the old post office. And then to the right of that, you see some more houses. And to the left of Commodore's house, there is a row of...
Could you just bear with us a second while we're...
Oh, so sorry. The pages I'm referring to are at the bottom right of each page. And in one or two instances, they're obscured by the photographs. So sorry, I'm looking at that picture from the sea.
Mr. Colvin, I think the panel will have a black and white copy, so it may be assistance if you can use left, right, etc. Would probably assist them.
Old snooker commentary.
Yes.
Yeah. In fact, Ray Reardon is, for those of you viewing in black and white, Ray Reardon is playing the red.
That's right.
Well, if it assists, my colleagues have the printed bundle, which is black and white. I've got the online version, so I've got it in colour. Joyce being a chairman. But we have all seen it online as well, and if it assists, we are local residents, and Cowes High Street is a familiar place.
I'm sure it's very, very familiar to you. Okay, so I'm going to take this quickly, but it is critical. But in the light of your indication, I'm not going to spend hours on it. So as you can see, Commodore's house is this sort of, as it were, the double-fronted house in the foreground. And immediately to the right is the old post office. And then there are dwellings to the right of the old post office, and also more to the left of Commodore's house. And those dwellings, as we'll see, there's 2 apartments which hover over the entranceway to the premises, literally hover over it. You could reach up and pretty much touch hands. If I might ask you then, just to turn 2 pages on to 193, and you can see Rosalie's of Cowes on the left of the photograph, And immediately next to Rosalie's of Cows, there's the alleyway, which Mr. Fumicelli will describe as a reverberant alleyway, which leads up to the front entrance of the property that I was just discussing with Mr. Orchard, with a slidey door. And on the right-hand side of the alleyway, there's a whole bunch of windows, which are habitable rooms belonging to the next door property. And on the left of the alleyway are habitable rooms belonging to Mr. Gosling. And there's also, you can't see it from this photograph, but the homes on the right of the alleyway, there's a balcony which literally looks over Commodore's house. And then if you wouldn't mind turning, please, to page 200. That gives you a slightly better look into that alleyway taken from the homes on the right. And there are people smoking and drinking. The door open, as has been Mr. Terry's wont. Why would people smoke in that alley rather than going out on the quay side at the back? One reason is sometimes there's a marquee out on the quay at the back, and so people have to go and smoke in the alley. But that literally means you're smoking underneath someone's bedroom window. Similarly, 201 speaks for itself. 202 is the view from inside Commodore's house out to that quay. Uh, 203 now is at the back of the property. On the left of the photograph is Mr. Gosling's house with the boat tethered. On the right of the property is the party space at Commodore's house. And you can see a window there. There are in fact 4 windows on that facade. It's difficult exactly to tell because 2 of them are UPVC and there might be some double glazing, we can't see. 2 of them are not, they're just old windows. But there's 4 windows literally adjacent, and above that boat is Mr. Gosling has more than one terrace, but one of his terraces is directly above that. 200 and...
Are those the windows shown in 205?
Yes, except that I think the hedge is obscuring the windows you can see in a line are I think they're the floor above. The windows that I'm talking about are obscured by the hedge. But you can see more of the windows if you look at page 204. The one that's nearest to the photographer looks like it's a UPVC window. And then there's others, one above with the arrow and then 2 more. And obviously what you would need to do, if you're actually serious about this, you'd do a noise test where you'd play music inside the room, and then you'd work out how much attenuation you get from the doors and the windows, and therefore what the impact is on the old post office. That just hasn't been done. I mean, it needs to be done, but Mr. Fumicelli has therefore had to make judgments about what sort of noise is likely to be produced inside Commodore's house and what the impact is going to be on Mr. Gosling's premises. And there's no evidence to counter it because the applicant just has not done that. As far as Mr. Gosling's done critical work, it's the core thing in this case. Page 205 is a view from an upper window in the old post office with Commodore's house to the right, and rather beautiful terrace giving into Mr. Gosling's conservatory, and that is pretty much 1.5 meters from this event space. And there at 206, you can see the stairs which go down from that terrace into the little alley at the bottom, which I've just been showing. at 209 is a view back. As you can see, obviously on the left is Commodore's house, and what Commodore's house refers to as the quay, where people would come out and socialise and photographs would be taken and might also have a marquee on it. And on the right is Mr. Gosling's property with the conservatory I've just been telling you about, and then the further terrace above. In the summer months, it won't surprise you to know that Mr. Gosling likes to throw his lovely conservatory doors open, family meals and so forth, but there'd be a wedding going on, or whatever it's going to be going on next door, perhaps for many hours. But on the left is the quay, and what you can see is about I can't really judge that, 3.5 or 4 foot high fence separating the quay from Mr. Gosling's property. And his experience is that people gather on the quay and they're staring right into Mr. Gosling's amenity space. And any noise from conversation, any music coming out of the Commodore House doors, every time the doors are open and closed, are clearly going to affect Mr. Gosling in his amenity space. I think the rest of the photographs pretty much speak for themselves. 210, 211. Another good view, 213, shows that alley with all the windows from the party space. 215 gives a good view of the properties on the other side with their balconies, which directly overlook the Commodore's house quay. And I think we can probably leave it there. I hope you've got a sense. And so clearly, the obvious thing which needs to be thought of is what is the noise impact of that going to be on Mr. Gosling and all of the other neighbours. And it's not just music. Some point has been made, yes, but music is deregulated up to 11 p.m. if an alcohol license is granted. And that is right, but it doesn't mean you ignore it, because the impact of granting an alcohol license is that live music can be played up till 11 o'clock. So question, do we grant the alcohol license at all? In the same way, drinking is not a licensable activity. You still take account of the impact of drinking or gathering when thinking about granting a license. But it's not just music. It is arrival, queuing in that alleyway. It is smoking, chatting, drinking in the alleyway during the event, and then dispersal. And then, of course, it's out on the quay doing exactly the same thing on the other side, so that all points of the residential properties adjacent will be affected by this, and you have no assessment whatsoever, apart from Mr. Fumicelli, before you, which helps you work out how acceptable things would be and whether conditions might potentially overcome the obvious difficulties arising. So that's what I want to say about the location. Can I take the history very quickly? Mr. Terry started using Commodore's house for very sporadic events a number of years ago. And that had an effect on his neighbours. And I know Victoria Wyatt is here and was keen to be here to explain that the impact on her was severe. And she prevailed on Mr. Terry, who, and I'm sure she is grateful for this, ceased doing those commercial events. Then in about 2023, he started picking up Commodore's house for events on a more regular basis. And then, as I've already indicated, just displayed a level of concertedness about this, because he formed a company, the nature of the business on Company's House listed as licensed restaurants. The website is created, he partners up with a local events company. And then in 2025, there's an increased number of events, many of them without temporary event notices even, as Mr. Terry conceded, see page 147. And then for the first time, a fire risk assessment was produced, which was thought to be defective, because the proposal was that a fire exit should go out the back along the jetty, and that was obviously not a place of safety. And Mr. Orchard has intervened and tried to bring the premises into compliance from a fire point of view. Then as I've said, Mr. Gosling complained to the council, and then just before the application was submitted, you don't necessarily need to turn this up, but on page A869, Mr. Terry writes to Mr. Gosling on the 23rd of March, saying, I'm discussing the best way to limit sound with our AV company, but it needs to be completed in April ahead of our first event. And that had repeated, I'm trying to cut through the history, repeated all sorts of assertions that Mr. Terry has made over the last several months, that he will be looking after noise. So this was another promise. But here we are in June, and still no noise plan whatsoever. But then in March, an application was submitted for a premises license. Now, Section 4 of the Licensing Act says that you must have regard to your own policy. It's not rocket science. I mean, policies are for. It's so that licensing subcommittees have got a good starting point and know for consistency how these premises are to be treated in an equal way, fair basis with all other premises, and residents know what it is they can expect, and applicants know what is expected of them. So if we just look at page A13, which is in my skeleton argument, paragraph 58, I'm setting out without comment what is in your own policy. The licensing authority will expect the applicant to propose practical steps as to how disturbance to local residents will be prevented. And the following general issues should also be covered in the operating schedule. So obviously the operating schedule is the way for the applicant to set out their stall. It's what goes out to the public and allows them to comment, so that everyone is commenting on the same basis, on the basis of the same information. So what are these things which you expect? Firstly, the establishment of an appropriate noise assessment procedure. The establishment of monitoring systems to demonstrate compliance with noise policies and with any specific noise restrictions. Pass over the next one, pass over the next one, turn over the page. And the comment we make is that clearly you haven't got any of that. And then the policy continues to suggest potential conditions to ensure that noise or vibration does not emanate from the premises so as to cause a nuisance to the occupants of nearby properties. One way is keeping doors and windows closed, and then there might be notices and so forth. But the last three I've underlined: reducing sound levels and installing a sound limiting device to prevent sound exceeding the appropriate level. Well, what is the appropriate level? Installing soundproofing measures to contain sound and vibration, and restriction on the location and use of areas designated for smoking. And then in other places, in the skeleton argument, I have referred to other things which need to have gone in, which should be provided, but just haven't been provided. But I'm going to focus on noise. Those are failings. They're signal failings because they just means that nothing has come in on the key issue in the case. And then what you would expect to happen when no assurance has been given through the application is that objections are made. And what you would then expect is that an applicant advised would look at the objections and think, okay, here's Mr. Gosling talking about arrival, smoking, drinking, dispersal, gathering, noise from the event itself. What are we going to say? The applicant hasn't put in anything, nothing. So I don't want to labour this, but it's absolutely at the heart of this application. Well, let's just look at what the application has got to say. You find this in your main agenda papers. And the bit which any practitioner looks at are the steps which are to be taken to promote the licensing objectives. And you find these on page 45. So the applicant has applied, and I appreciate there's no possibility it's going to operate 7 nights a week, 365 days a year, obviously. Probably no event space operates with that level of concentration. But the applicant has applied for a completely open-ended license with no limitation on the number of events a year, number of days a week, or anything of that sort, and has not offered that it won't operate for what the company is established for, to be a licensed restaurant. It hasn't said that. It hasn't said it won't operate as a pub or a wine bar or a restaurant or anything of that sort. It doesn't say that, and it doesn't restrict the number of events. The compliance suggests all dry hire clients will be issued with a hiring agreement, which includes mandatory compliance with the premises license. It looks like the applicant has thought about that a little, because everything is now to be handled through this mobile bar company. And then it says, crime and disorder, SIA security, for dry hires involving high risk events. Now those are defined 18th and 21st birthdays or large parties. We will commit to employing SIA licensed door supervisors at a given ratio. Now, we now see from the report, your officer's report, paragraph 94, and just turn up paragraph 94, it's worth just comparing. It's on page 24 of the papers, the main papers. It says the applicant has confirmed in discussion with officers they don't intend to host high-risk events. Well, that would need to be conditioned if that's part of what the applicant is saying. But it is their intention moving forward to have one member of SIA registered door staff to manage the door. So that would need to be conditioned because there's no promise for SIA in the application. And according to Mr. Orchard, in his very helpful answers to my questions, you'd need 2. You'd need one for each of the fire exits. So that would just need a little bit of work. But no high risk events, there will be SIA security. And then when it comes to noise management, doors and windows will remain closed during reg entertainment, except for entry exit. There's going to be loads of entry exit because it's a small room giving out onto a key. And then people are going to be asked to leave quietly, and there'll be staff helping people leave quickly and quietly. So that's it. And clearly, that's not good enough. The plan attached to the license application is at page 55. And there's no basis, there's no procedure, there's no process, there's no power in the licensing authority to alter the plan, because that's the plan which has gone out to public consultation. So this remains the plan. And so if a license is granted, it's granted with that plan, but with a non-viable rear fire exit, no secondary means of escape. But you can, and the kitchen apparently doesn't exist anymore. The plan shows one toilet, it's not even vented, and it shows no disabled facilities and stairs down and so forth. So that's what was presented back in March. But I'm not going to go on and on about all the technical details. Page 61, environmental health comments. Ours to be pulled back a bit, and that means that if the license is granted, it doesn't need separate consent for regulated entertainment, but of course you still have to take account of it. But an interesting comment, which might have set off a line of inquiry, I'll come back to it, halfway down the page, the above reflects the limited sound insulation performance offered by the premises. Please hold that thought, because I'm going to say another word about it based on a document we received from your licensing officers last night, penned by Mr. Power. And I'm also going to ask Mr. Fumicelli to explain what is meant by limited sound insulation performance. But on these conditions, the environmental health point of view seems to go with the limited sound insulation performance, pull the hours back to 11. You can go outside for all the licensed hours. You just can't take drinks outside after 10. So you can still go outside and smoke and socialize. There's got to be signs saying, please keep your voices down in the middle of a party. And there's going to be a written dispersal policy, but none that we've seen or can comment on, even though your policy says there should be one. And it's extraordinary, really, that there's still no noise management plan or noise assessment produced by the applicant. So we have produced one. And then the police agreed some crime and disorder conditions, which fine. Then, and this is the last bit of the history I think I need to take you to, page 95 of those papers. What appears to be an olive branch. On Commodore House headed paper sent to all the objectors by the council. We've applied for a premises license, appointed this bar company, and so on and so forth. We'll operate as before with much tighter controls. John Terry, the owner of Commodore's House, has suffered a period of ill health, and sorry to hear that. And so we, as a company, have taken the decision to restrict events going forward to only having a maximum number of 50 guests. No loud live music. For example, a singer and guitar will be permitted, a DJ will not, and that will itself reduce the number of events that can be held. As previously, most events were 80 to 150, and it restricts the type of events. There'll be no late night partying with loud music from a band or DJ. It'll be more corporate receptions or product launches. And you do, it also says they'll be working with environmental health to introduce a noise management plan. Sorry if I keep saying those words. There is still no noise management plan, and we're 2 months on from that letter. But you don't need me to tell you that that looks like an olive branch. It seems helpful. Okay, there'll be corporate events, and won't be loud late night party, so forth. 50 maximum, can work with that. And it was effectively amplified by a direct letter, which you might want to turn up, which came to Mr. Gosling personally at page A173. which repeats the offer, 50 people. Restriction of live entertainment to acoustic or background music. No live pop or rock bands or DJs, background music through our PA system, singers with a guitar or gentle acoustic music will be permitted. And we'll put that out on our comms, put it out on our website. And then some stuff about fire. So that came on a Thursday. But by the Monday morning, back to page 97 of the agenda papers, the applicant's been in touch to advise they reviewed their decision to limit events to 50 people and to not allow recorded stroke DJ performances of music. They are withdrawing these revisions. The licensing authority, that's you, are best placed to grant or refuse permission and to decide which, if any, additional conditions should be applied to any license if granted. So it's been left to you. The applicant will get what it can get out of you, and that throws the focus onto you and what you think is reasonably acceptable, which is where I came in. And we say that if you were to grant this license, what is reasonably acceptable is exactly what the applicant said was reasonably acceptable 2 months ago before they did a volte-face and changed their mind. Right, let me come to noise. So Mr. Gosling, as you've seen from the photographs, he is effectively the closest neighbour, the most open spaces right next door to the property. He will get the full brunt of this, but also Victoria Wyatt can speak, and Craig here will also speak about the impacts past and present. And I've already outlined all the different components of noise. There's about 5 different components. The front and rear of the premises can be used at any time. The only restriction is taking drinks out after 10. It can be any day of the week. It can be an indeterminate number of events per year. And granting this license, just granting the license, enables this noise to be propagated without any kind of noise management plan or conditions. So, in the absence of any actual noise assessment, my client, Instructor Mr. Fumicelli here, who's a very well-known noise expert, independent, acts on all sides, chaired committees set up by the Institute of Acoustics. He's a member of the Institute of Acoustics Environmental Noise Committee and a member of the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health's Advisory Noise Satellite Panel. So he knows what he's talking about, and he's got a reputation which he will maintain by giving independent evidence. He's also, and I'm going to ask you just to look at page A241. He's produced a long statement of truth, which is the sort of statement of truth which experts have to provide to courts to make sure that they are being straightforward and treating themselves not as a servant of the paying party, but as a servant of the determining tribunal, so that you are enabled to place trust in the work that they do. They're not adjusting the contents of the report according to the identity of the payer. So I'm going to bring in Mr. Fumicelli. Was that, do you want to put your mic on actually, Mr. Fumicelli? Was that a sufficient introduction about your background, or do you want to add to that account of your background?
If I may just briefly, I've been in consultancy for since 2002. I work on behalf of both regulatory authorities and in other circumstances, applicants for premises license. And I did do 16 years as an environmental health officer. So I've kind of seen both sides, work on both sides of the fence, so to speak. But in these situations, it's very important that what I submit and what I say is to assist you in making a decision wherever possible. Do you want me to?
Yeah, well, just tell us what, because you've been given pretty much free rein to produce your report. Just tell us what it was that you were asked to do.
I was asked to consider the proposed, the application for a premises license for Commodore's house, the context of being the noise issues that might arise from that use, and they kind of boil down into two main areas. One is noise generated within the premises that may then break out of the premises, and then noise generated by guests, whatever, arriving, leaving, using the relatively narrow passageway from the high street to the front entrance, but also the rear quay area.
And how much time have you spent around Mr. Gosling's house, and how many times have you visited?
This is the fourth time I've visited the island in connection specifically with Commodore's house.
Okay. And can I ask you, on page 244, you've really gone over where what you call noise sensitive receptors are. I've tried to outline the proximity of buildings and also the noise insulation properties of Commodore's house. But can you just express that in your own words, please, how you've assessed the location of those?
Well, you've taken us to the pictures that show from the River Medina, the rear of Commodore's house, and then the adjoining residentials, both to the right of as you look at looking from the river towards Commodore's house, and to the left. There isn't a single residential property that's close by. There are multiple properties nearby. There's Mr. Gosling's property to the right, and the flat that's part of the old post office, which he rents out. There's also then apartments in Waterfront House immediately adjacent. The Mr. Gosling's property is separated by a very narrow passageway. You can stand in that passageway and you can't extend both arms outwards because it's that narrow. It's the order of 1.5 meters width. Waterfront House is on the other side, is not quite so close to the physical structure, but it is actually directly adjacent to and overlooks the passageway from the high street to the front entrance. So we're talking very, very close proximity, a couple of meters maximum.
Right. And you must have, from photographs and just from looking, you must have formed a view about the noise insulation performance or properties of Commodore's house itself. What can you say about that, please?
Well, I've had to use a degree of judgment, but there is quite a lot of information you can find on the.
Hang on a second, no.
Could you just pause a second? There'll be an opportunity to ask questions in a moment.
Okay, my question is not about what's been spoken about, and forgive me if I don't understand this process fully. This feels like there's a cross-examination or an examination. Is the expert giving his account of his report, or is I don't quite understand how this is working. It's being led down a.
Yeah, Mr. Colvin is probably used to being in court.
And we're not.
And it does come across as putting a witness on the stand, but I think what we're having is Mr. Fumcelli's account.
That's exactly what we're having.
Yeah,
so
I just
it does strike
it's not really talking
a little odd for
giving
these committees having this.
questions.
Okay,
So-
well, I'm very happy to let Mr. Fumcelli loose. I mean, it's absolutely fine. I don't mind how it's done. I want to do it in a way which suits the subcommittee, but haven't got a whole bunch of questions. I'm just trying to get them into sections we can talk about.
I haven't got any problem with it. I think it's just a means of getting Mr. Fumcelli to give his account. So
much information that can be given.
okay, so if we continue,
Thank
I
you.
am conscious, Chair, that we've been sitting for over 2 hours, and I'm wondering if
I'm
quick
conscious
comfort,
as well, and I was going to say, well, I was looking at the clock, but I think we should not break evidence at this point. But I think we will look for an appropriate break shortly, for the reasons you suggest. But I don't want to break the witness of a single, the evidence of a single witness. So perhaps when Mr. Fumcelli has concluded, which he seems to suggest is quite soon, we might have a break at that point.
Okay, and then I'll have a few more minutes and then I'm done. Okay,
thank you.
So you were just talking about the noise insulation properties of the building.
Yes, well, the building's is a historic building. I understand it was originally built with the intention of the large space in the ground floor was for a building maintaining boats. I mean, that would be very sensible given its position directly onto the river. It's reasonably robust in terms of the masonry construction of the walls that form the outer building envelope. But as with any building, the acoustic weak points are going to be the windows and the doors, particularly if those have to be open. It was never, it was built and it was designed and built, and it without, sorry, at the time when it would not have been conceived as as use for a venue type operation. It's fairly ordinary in the degree of noise insulation is provided, and that just isn't adequate for the kind of the livelier kinds of entertainment that you might find in a licensed premises. It would be acceptable to run very low key type operations there, things like dinners, lunches, exhibitions, with very, very low levels of background music. You know, the kind of levels of background music you would find in a quite peaceful restaurant, where it's just there to provide a degree of ambiance. It's definitely secondary, even tertiary to the main operation there. Anything other than that, and there really is an increasing risk of substantial impacts on the residents, both on Mr. Gosling's side, but also on Waterfront House on the other side. Now, that's just in terms of what's happening inside the building.
And can I just, without sounding too much like we're in court, but that's really what you've covered in section 5 of your report, where you've tried to apply standard environmental criteria, predictions, noise production of different sorts of venues, noise attenuation, and so forth. And is that essentially the conclusion you've reached, that sort of quiet event would be acceptable, but if it goes beyond that, it's unacceptable?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm just cutting through quite a bit of technical details I'm sure you've had the opportunity to read. And then you were just going on to section 6, which is about the other sorts of noise, arrival, dispersal, gathering, and so forth. Talk about that, please.
Yeah, I've looked at the external noise, so to speak, that might be generated, and primarily I've focused on the passageway between the high street and the main entrance to the property. And there I've looked at the what might happen if various numbers of people were to gather in that space. And I see from the updated plan that there is a proposal to use this alleyway for the consumption of alcohol. It's not simply for egress and access to and from the property. And I've calculated, based upon standard information, around how much noise people make when they're talking normally, when they're talking with a raised voice, or even when they're shouting. And anything other than just a very small number of people, less than a handful, probably even I think one in the there is likely to be a significant impact at the windows of habitable rooms of Waterfront Lodge next door, to the right as you look at the Commodore's house on the High Street, but also on to bedrooms on the upper first or second floor of the old post office, which is Mr. Gosling's property. So the particular characteristics of that alleyway really don't help. It's quite a narrow alleyway. The buildings that are formed either side of it are 4 stories high. So it effectively acts like what we sometimes call an acoustic canyon. The sound reverberates, it echoes and bounces back and forth. So it doesn't dissipate to the same degree as it would do if this was an open space, and that reinforces the problem. It increases the overall level. I haven't looked to the same extent at the use of the key. The key is in part screened by Commodore House itself from both Waterfront House and from Mr. Gosling's terrace, although a small section of the key is visible. Basically, you break the line of sight by the edge of a building or some form of screening, and it will act as a noise barrier. And that's not to say that if there are gatherings of large groups of people, double figures and more on the key, if it's used as almost like an extension of Commodore's house with a marquee to provide some form of weather protection or whatever, that marquee is going to be, for all intents and purposes, acoustically transparent. If you're going to have large groups of people in there, they are going to generate noise, and that is also then potentially going to have an impact to the residential properties either side.
And can I just ask you very quickly about doors opening and closing during the evening? I mean, there's no aircon in the property, we understand. So what's the impact of that likely to be during summer events?
Well, an open doorway presents zero noise insulation. As part of the bigger facade, you can calculate a composite sound insulation, but it's very, very much reduced. Opening the door, opening a window will allow noise to escape unhindered. It will only exacerbate the problem.
Okay. I just want to take you to one other document. It's the last document I'm going to take you to, apart from the conditions. Then I'm going to shut up. Which is the document we were sent last night by your officers, which is an email from Mr. Power to a number of people dated the 10th of April, 4:55. Did you receive that yesterday, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So the first part of that email replicates what you had as Mr. Power's formal position by way of conditions. Then underneath it, it says general recommendations. He says, I ask that you consider noise control prior to offering live and recorded music in line with the proposed license. This is necessary considering the age and character of the building, which has not been designed to accommodate heavier entertainment offerings. Does that accord with what you've just said?
Yes, it's worded differently, but it basically gets to the same point. This building isn't designed and constructed to accommodate without causing problems and noise problems to the neighbours. Anything other than really quite low key, polite, I often describe it to forms of this sort of use.
Okay, and then he suggests other things about he says there should be a noise management plan with reorientation of speakers, additional mitigation, sealing doors, considering types of music, microphone use, percussion, noise monitoring, and so forth. And are these the sorts of things that you might expect to see if there was a competent noise management plan?
Very much so, with the addition, I would say, of some form of mechanisms for managing how much noise is generated within the premise, a noise limiter. You know, there is a finite, even with if physical works are done to improve the sound insulation, to enable windows to be kept closed, to increase the amount of noise insulation provided by the building. That's finite. There needs to be some kind of cap on how much noise is generated within the premises. Otherwise, you'll just push through the ability of the building to contain it properly, and there'll be problems.
Okay, and that's all I was going to ask, Mr. Commissioner. If it's any help to you, I think I should be finished in about 6 minutes because I want to take you to the conditions. But it's up to you. If you'd like to take a break now, that's fine.
We will do that then on the basis this will be 6 minutes or
You're very
thereabouts.
kind.
There will be some questions, but
Okay.
we hold those till after the break.
Yeah. Okay, and thank you for accommodating. So these are the reasons why we say that the application should be refused. I won't go over them. I've set them out at length. But if you were against me and thought there should be a license, we have set out some suggested conditions for your consideration, which you can find on page A21, paragraph 80. And really, these conditions just provide the sort of protections which is in many ways contemplated in the discussion, but would need to be enshrined in actual legal protections. So the first is that the premises shouldn't be used other than a private events venue for pre-booked. Is only supplied to invited guests and shouldn't be used as a pub, bar, or restaurant. That shouldn't come as a shock to anybody because that is essentially what the applicant has been saying. Secondly, the number of persons. You'll remember that the reason for restriction of numbers was fire, but it was also noise on the applicant's own count. And we are suggesting that the number should be the applicant's number of 50 persons, unless a higher figure is provided by EHO. And that would mean that the EHO would have to give consideration to whether the applicant had now done enough to satisfy legitimate noise considerations. Thirdly, the applicant in its offer letter was emphasising that there are really only a very few events a year which would happen pursuant to the licence. And we are suggesting that a fair number would be 12 events a year. And remember, there's still the ability to have 10s. The applicant has used 10s. They know all about 10s. But we're saying that the licence, at least at this instance, should be 12 events a year. Of course, they can come back if they show they can do it without any disturbance, any problems, then they can come back and vary that. But this is somewhat experimental, and we say 12 events a year is fair. Then, exactly what the applicant has been promising, exactly what your own statement of licensing policy says should happen, exactly what Mr. Power suggested, and exactly what Mr. Fumicelli is saying should happen, there has to be a suitable and sufficient noise management plan. It's absolutely critical. And I've taken the model condition from a different authority, which is not a good model condition on this, and it should include all the things which are set out, including a proper noise impact assessment, a noise limiter, noise insulation, use of mechanical ventilation to prevent the need to open doors and windows, speakers, no speakers outside, and proper proposals to prevent noise nuisance from people outside the premises. So we view that as absolutely critical, that there needs to be a formal noise plan produced pursuant to the licence, which is then signed off. And fifthly, the premises are to be operated in accordance with that NMP. Then number 6 is the works condition, which I was just discussing with Mr. Orchard. It's a very standard condition. That's in fact taken from another authority's works condition. It's just your way of saying, as a licensing authority, from a fire and means of escape perspective, we're content with that, provided that the relevant professionals have signed it off. There should be nothing contentious about that. And seventhly, a screen, please, between the quay and the old post office to prevent overlooking and attenuate noise. You can get screens which are in fact noise attenuating in their own right. And so the specification for the screen should be approved by a senior environmental health officer, to which, having read what is in the report, we would suggest 2 further conditions. Looking at paragraph 94 of your report again, they do not intend to hold high-risk events, which was then confirmed in your questions of the applicant. You should have a condition that says there should be no high-risk events, including what they say in their op schedule would be high-risk events, including 18th and 21st parties or DJ-led or dance events. So those would be the high-risk events, which shouldn't be happening here. And you've heard what Mr. Fumicelli has had to say about that. And secondly, SIA registered door staff are promised in paragraph 94 at all events. According to Mr. Orchard, there needs to be 2, 1 for each fire exit. And so there should be a condition that said there should be at least 2 licensed security operatives at each and every event. Of course, if they sort out their outward opening doors, etc., they can always come back to vary that, but that's what's necessary now. Can I stress, finally, that in drafting those conditions, we have tried to be fair, but they're not horse trading. We view those as a base level minimum set of conditions to answer or to try to answer the problems, the very obvious problems which we have identified with this application. And you've been very patient. Thank you very much, but that completes my submissions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. We will have 10 minutes, 5 minutes. I'm keen we get on to the remaining speakers, so perhaps take 5 minutes. Let's call it 12:23 by that clock upstairs, up on the wall, to give us a little bit of time, and then we will reconvene. Thank you. Right, it is 23 past, as I said, so hopefully everyone's had a break and we can reconvene. Please. So, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alvin and Mr. Fumicelli, for your representations. We should now turn to any questions upon those. I think Councillor Reynolds definitely has something to ask, and then see what other questions there are.
Hello. Good afternoon. One thing, no other representation is or talk has been given about the other operations within the area, i.e. like the Island Sailing Club. Obviously, they've got loud, quite noisy events that go on throughout the summer. And also in very close proximity to yourselves, the museum. They sometimes do events in their upper room, the Aiken Museum, albeit very, very few. Do they have any bearing on some of the reflections that you're mentioning? Because you know, in your initiation statement, you'd sort of said that it was a very, very tranquil area. Well, in the winter, I totally agree, but in the summer there is a fair bit of activity down in that part of the town. So that's what I wanted to ask. Has any sort of mitigation been given to those events that are going on as well?
Yes. I might bring Mr. Fumicelli in. You are right that the Island Sailing Club, the weekend, is tending to have music in its lower marquee. And I'm treading carefully because they're not here to answer, but clearly music played in the lower marquee at the Island Sailing Club has an impact on both Mr. Gosling and his neighbours. There is I really don't want to teach my grandmother to suck eggs, if it sound a bit preachy, sorry. There's a concept called cumulative impact where the licensing policy says things have reached such a pitch that nothing extra can be tolerated. But you don't have a cumulative impact policy. What you're looking at is the impact specifically of Commodore's house on my client's premises. And my client would be loath to have the Island Sailing Club with parties on one side and Commodore's house with parties on the other side. And singly or in combination, they will change my client's premises from being something where he's able to look out in peace to having events going on both sides. So he is taking a case-by-case approach to each of these. Mr. Fumicelli, I want to add, I don't know anything about the museums. I'm just going to ask whether either of these gentlemen know anything about that. Oh, sorry, no. Craig, you get the chance to talk in a moment. I'm asking Mr. Fumicelli. And do you know anything about the museum? Okay. Apparently, it hasn't been concerned.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me that Mr. Gosling isn't saying he's had issues with things happening at the museum. It is significantly further away. The Commodore's house is, as I said, within less than 2 arms length of residential properties on either side. The Island Sailing Club is, to my quick approximation, more than 50 metres away. That's not to say that that couldn't cause problems. And then I would also add, the cumulative point, the fact that there might already be issues with other existing premises. Adding to that isn't going to make it any worse, and it doesn't excuse the need for the activities at Commodore's house to be properly assessed and therefore properly controlled and managed. So it's something to take into account. But I think the issues with Commodore's house stand on their own as an issue, and they aren't in any way lessened or mitigated by what may or may not happen elsewhere.
I mean, it's so difficult because we haven't got the evidence about I understand. But there's two possibilities. The one is that Island Sailing Club is not a problem, in which case the point stands. The other possibility is Island Sailing Club is creating a nuisance by holding music in a marquee. And that should not be a reason then to say, oh, well, the die is cast, the pass has been sold, let's have some more. So we would just say, take this one on its merits.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Marr.
Non-specifically at this moment, I'd like to hear from the other objectors actually before I raise any questions.
I just have one question. Mr. Fiumicelli, you referred to 4 visits to the premises we're talking about. Could you tell us when those visits were?
I can't tell you the precise dates. One was 2 weeks ago when they, I think they may have advertised the 10s in operation at the at Commodore's house. It didn't actually, nothing happened. There was nothing happened on that night. I've previously been to familiarise myself with several weeks beforehand with Commodore's house and its position. I'd say 4. The other 2 were actually in connection with primarily the Island Sailing Club, where I've been on more occasions than that. But at the same time, because it was now live, there was an application in. I was asked to consider and look at what might be happening in terms of Commodore's house. And I took the opportunity to walk down along Mr. Gosling's. I think it's a shared key with Commodore's house, so I could look back, similar to the photograph that you've got in the package, and see how close the neighbouring properties were. I've not actually witnessed.
I just realised your microphone's not on.
Oh,
Got the
sorry,
wrong
sir.
microphone on.
I've not actually been there when there's activity at the Commodore's house. It's effectively been dark. I think on one occasion the lights were on the residential accommodation upstairs. On all the accommodations at the time I've been there, there's been a vehicle parked at the bottom of the passageway from the high street, but there's not been any a party, an event, or anything else happening there.
So essentially 2 visits while this application has been live, probably 1 in April, 1 in May.
Yes.
Thank you. In that case, did Ms. Gorman appear? Okay, so we have 2 other speakers. I will turn to them in the order I gave before. Mr. Wilson Smith, this is your opportunity.
Thank you. My wife and I live at 77 Waterfront House, and I would ask the kind lady at the end there that I have put together just 5 or 6 pieces of paper that illustrate what I want to say and will save a lot of trying to fight through 200 pages of other photographs and enable you to concentrate just on those ones, if that is acceptable to you.
Chair, these photographs are actually already included in the original bundle that we have received, so they are not new, but it's perhaps saving members from having to flip back and forth. However,
the ones with the bubble heads, are they?
Yeah, they are.
They have all previously been submitted.
Have all
It just
previously
saves you hunting through a huge bundle of paperwork and hopefully will save some time.
Yes, that's correct. The ones where the faces have been obscured further down. So they are not new, but one particular photo, which was included in last night's supplementary bundle, which was not included, which could be removed if you'd like me to pass these down to you, to save you flipping back and forth in your main bundle. Or if you're happy to stay with the bundles that you've got, then I can just keep hold of these. Like that.
I think we, just to make sure we're all looking at the same thing. Thank you. Yes, these are already familiar, but please use them as you see fit in.
Yes, I thought it would just save you trying to hunt through them, but it does illustrate from the rear picture of our property, which is shown with that lounge sliding door, and our kitchen window through which that photograph that I think has now been removed, but shows that we are 10 or 15 feet away from the entry exit doors. The 170 photograph just shows the relative tranquility of the rear of the properties as opposed to the high street. And the last 2 or 3 give an indication of what it's like when people are trying to get in to Commodore's house. And 184 shows very clearly our roof terrace on the very top, and also the
Chairman, can I just interrupt? Sorry.
Yes.
Just to ensure fairness, I do not believe the applicant has a copy of those.
I'm so sorry.
And if there are bundles, numbers on them, it may be that we just refer to the bundle.
I will pass my bundle over because.
Thank you. Sorry, Chair, to interrupt.
Thank you so much.
I think that's only fair that we do.
I can look over Bill's shoulder, or I do.
Sorry.
We have seen these before, so I do apologise for that. I'm so sorry. Thank you for that. Sorry, please continue. I do apologise.
Of course, no problem. 184 just shows our rooftop terrace, and then below that our lounge with the sliding doors and the balcony over which we look to the entrance and exit of the property at Commodore's house. Picture C shows what it's like when people queue up to go into the premises, and shows the edge of our balcony and the proximity of that to the alleyway. And the last 2 are again indications of people just using that alleyway. I will try and be brief. A lot of ground has been covered by Mr. Colville, but briefly, this is anecdotal evidence as much as anything, in that my wife and I bought and moved in January 2009 to our property, which we renovated to a considerable degree and looked upon as being our forever retirement home. For about the first 5 years, we lived quite happily next to Mr. and Mrs. Terry in their residential home. We accepted that when we bought a property, that the front on the high street would be noisy. But what was wonderful was once you went to the rear of the property, you could hear the lapping of the water against the terrace and the boats going past. Unfortunately, after that 5-year period or so, Mr. Terry decided that he thought he would produce a pop-up restaurant during Cows Week, which caused a considerable amount of unrest amongst the neighbours with the cooking of food, the selling of alcohol and the general traffic during the day. Environmental health were involved. And if you look around 2015, 16, 17, there were submissions, letters. We even had an environmental health officer come and stand in our lounge during these events. So it was already causing some problems. Unfortunately, after that, it then expanded into wedding receptions, which then started to include microphones, DJs, recorded music, and live bands. And an example of not being in the position of actually accepting that Mr. Terry is very concerned about his neighbours, I would like to bring your attention to just 2 items. Page 81 on my letter of submission, which is part of the agenda package, which is a letter from Mr. Terry dated the 27th of April 2019 to his neighbours, and saying that people should be pleased to hear that this year we shall not be running a public restaurant open to casual visitors. A statement of intent from Mr. Terry, which if you go to the following page, listed sheet B on page 84, I took some photographs of what was happening some 12 weeks later during Cows Week. And as you can see from the photographs, here we have an outside food court being pushed to sell 1-ton burgers and cocktails and alcohol by some very pushy ladies out in the high street with flyers accosting anybody that walked past to see if they'd like to come in. So much for his concern for his neighbours, which a few weeks later he completely went against. And unfortunately, in our 16 years or so we've lived there, this has been the attitude of Mr. Terry, and he has shown scant regard for his neighbours in any shape or form. What's now proposed, going from 1 or 2 weddings perhaps a month on a Saturday, is an open licence from 9 in the morning till 11 at night, 7 days a week, potentially 365 days a year, with no restrictions on what they do at this point in time. Mr. Terry has now joined forces with 2 commercial companies whose websites clearly show that they are in the business of promoting events, making money and making a profit. So what may happen now with Commodore's House, with the unknown bar company and the lady that looks after his events, I dread to think. The problem will be, as my person sitting next to me has suggested in far better terms than I can, is noise. Noise is our absolute #1 priority problem. I do also notice that in the council documentation and in the article that appeared in the county press on Friday, which I'm sure most of you will have seen, but if not, there's a half page on page 27 of the county press covering this meeting and the implications of it. It's stated that it's really just a paperwork exercise in changing this to a license, and this could potentially go on and almost certainly will go on, has been going on for 10 years. That is plainly not true. We've lived there for 16 years. At no time has the members of the public been able to walk in off the high street down an 85-foot private gated driveway up to the front door of Commodore's house and go inside for a drink. This is a huge change on what has gone on before, which in itself has been hard to cope with. There is an illustration of just how close we are, which I'm afraid it sounds like you're not prepared to have a look at, but there is a picture taken from my kitchen window, which looks directly on the entry and exit doors. It's interesting to note, and it was mentioned earlier, that there has been no meaningful attempt that I'm aware of from the people that are now promoting this to engage with the neighbours in any form whatsoever as to what they intend to do, how they're going to try and avoid upsetting them or anything else. Now, I think it was stated that meetings had taken place. They certainly haven't with us, and to my knowledge, they haven't with anybody else whatsoever. The only way that this as a commercial exercise is going to be viable financially is a huge footfall of people. We have airy-fairy promises of we're going to have people on the door, we're going to control this, we're going to only let people in on this event or that event. The reality is now anybody can walk in off the high street into these premises. If they're going to have security, and they never have for the last 16 years ever had anybody seemingly in control, they're going to have need of a great number of staff. Those staff are going to have to be paid. I cannot see how they can staff that to the level that would enable them to control anything without encouraging a huge number of people to visit those premises and spend money. I appreciate that the licensing authority do have a requirement to try and provide amenities to the public to enjoy having a drink and food. As I'm sure you're well aware, because you issued the licenses, I walked from Watch House Lane to the top of Shooters Hill along the High Street and counted 23 premises that have a license to sell alcohol and in most cases provide food. Do we really think that we have a desperate need for yet another one? I also note that the council does have an obligation to focus and have regard to neighbours and the enjoyment of their own homes. The reality is that with doors open or closed, but certainly open, and there's straight away a conflict between the fire department wanting the doors open and trying to minimise noise by closing the doors, that we're going to become prisoners in our own homes, certainly during the summer months. To give you an example, the last week or 10 days, we've had 4 or 5 builders carrying out remedial works at Commodore's house. Even with all of our double glazed windows and doors shut, we could hear every word those builders said as they went in and out of that building and talked to themselves while they were either breaking concrete out or mixing cement, including, unfortunately, a great number of F words, which my wife had to put up with. But that just gives you the indication of how much noise nuisance we get. And that was just from 4 or 5 builders that hadn't had any alcohol. And you can see from those pictures that regularly we've had 20 or 30 people in that alleyway. We even had 2 that stripped off and had a fight. And we will have to endure mobile phones. And I think we all understand how irritating a mobile phone is with somebody that's having a loud conversation. The property is just totally and utterly unsuitable for what they want to do. And I'm afraid with the people that have now joined in promoting this, it's going to be an absolute nightmare for us. So please, I beg of you, give us some support and try and look at it a little from our side. And as Mr. Colville has said, how would you feel when you go home tonight and you're faced with that in your back garden? Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions now or later.
Thank you very much. I think probably the best thing to do is if we hear from Ms. Wyatt, and then if there are any questions overall on the basis of what we've heard from those objecting. So, Ms. Wyatt, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you very much.
We can hear you. So
Excellent.
Please, could we hear what you'd like to tell us?
I'm going to be very brief. I lived in number 76 Waterfront House and was the freeholder of that building from 2008 until I left in 2017, but I owned the freehold and the apartment until early 2022. I'm here in full support and heartfelt sympathy for Adam Gosling, Craig Wilson-Smith, and the other neighbours. When I first went to live there, it was a joy. It was a quiet haven. It was wonderful on the back of the house. As Craig Wilson-Smith said, the high street, you expect noise. You don't buy a house in the high street if you don't expect some noise from that angle. But in the early days, John Terry and Mrs. Terry were very much part of social life in Cowes. They did hold 2 or 3 very, very excellent charity raising events during the year in their beautiful home and entertainment space. And as neighbours, we all supported that and enjoyed going. In 2015, it changed radically because it became pop-up restaurants, everything you've heard about. I'm not going to bore you with repetition. But it was shocking. I was unable to use my balcony, which was my prime entertainment during Cowes Week. I had parties that had to be aborted and come in and close the doors. It was shocking. The noise level from the premises was atrocious. everything you have heard, absolutely every word you've heard from Mr. Colville, Mr. Fumicelli, Mr. Wilson-Smith isn't just true, it is absolutely the truth, the heartfelt truth of what has gone on. And I personally experienced 2015 to 2017. I'm going to be careful what I say about the promises that we all had from Mr. Terry at the time, the reassurances. I'll simply say that none of them came to fruition. So anything that you've heard from his proposals, personally, I would take with the same pinch of salt I took between 2015 and 2017 with what was going to get better and going to get better. I do not understand why either the people directly involved in this, or indeed the genuine commercial business owners in hospitality and the high street who pay business rates, fully comply with all the legislation, they will suffer because a private house is being given carte blanche to become an events venue with no real regulation. I just ask you to think about everything that's been said by Mr. Colville, Mr. Fumicelli and Mr. Wilson-Smith, reflect on it, and I hope you'll come to the correct decision, because this is something that I'm very supportive of. It's not affecting me anymore, but I feel so strongly for these people because I know firsthand how bad it was. And this is going to become many, many times worse. And I thank you for listening, but I'm here to support Mr. Gosling's team and everybody else in the immediate vicinity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, as suggested just a moment ago, turn to my fellow councillors for any questions on what we've just heard. If there are any.
Thank you, Chair. We will clearly be determining the application on the basis of its own merits and in accordance with the licensing objectives. I got the general impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you will, that certainly as regards Mr. Gosling, you weren't necessarily against these premises being used for some type of licensing activity per se. It was more the extent of it and the growth and the amount of extra noise, etc., that could be generated, which but having listened obviously to Ms. Wyatt and Mr. Wilson-Smith, I mean, just so that I can find out where you're coming from, are you in accordance with Mr. Colvin that if it was scaled down to an extent, then perhaps we could try to find some compromise that could be reached? I mean, Mr. Colville has you know, sort of laid out his baseline, if you like. Perhaps you could let me know.
Well, thank you. My problem, I think, is accepting that what the management of Commodore's House say will be carried out. The problem you've got is that noise will emanate from that building through, especially through open doors. We certainly have this conflict between the fire brigade wanting doors open ostensibly and ideally all the time, and the people, if they have a desire to minimize the noise, to shutting all those doors. That's impractical. I just don't see how that's going to work. So I think the reality is that we are going to be plagued by noise almost with whatever they do. So in answer to your question, I think the license should be refused, full stop, because we've now got to the end of a period of a situation where more and more is being done in this building, often without the proper regulation being achieved. And this is now tip of the iceberg, I think. So I have serious reservations because, as I said, to carry out the sort of work that will be required to control this, I just don't see how it can be financially viable. The number of people you would require. How do you, for instance, on Sunday when I was writing some of my notes on our roof garden, I could hear a lot of babble of noise looking over the balcony, 11, 12 young guys, 3 or 4 with pints of beer in their hand, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, coming down the high street, a lot of noise, but they passed by and disappeared. And I said to my wife, my God, what if they get their license and these people can just turn right and come down the private gate alleyway and go into that building and then stand outside carrying on their arguments and conversations with pints of beer in their hand? How are you going to regulate that 7 days a week from 9 in the morning till 10 at night? You'd need an army of people. And are they going to have the will to go out and say, hey guys, sorry, you've already had enough to drink. We're running a bar company here for profit, but we're not going to sell you a pint of beer. This isn't going to happen.
I understand where you're coming from on that one, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to, and I'm sure Mr. Colville will back me up on this one. Noise, antisocial behaviour emanating from other premises or within the area is not really within our remit to consider. We have to consider this application on its merits, and whatever decision we make, we will make, and if conditions are imposed, then that can help to regulate it. The EHO is an ongoing organisation. It exists, and you can continue to liaise with the EHO, you can continue to liaise with the fire, with the police, and so on and so forth. I'm just...
Yeah. I'll draw us back because we're still hearing evidence in this hearing. You've still got your microphone on. Was that because you had something more to add, or?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I mean, I'm an amateur in this. Forgive me. We're surrounded by experts. I'm just a householder that is trying to give you perhaps the little more personal view of how it impacts my wife and I. So forgive me if I'm asking things that legally are not possible or what have you.
Don't worry. Thank you for your contribution. I don't see anyone else wishing to talk. And any other question? We're at the point where I should ask if there are any other questions. Yeah.
Hello, it's directed at your applicant, and that is to make this viable. And I've got a lot of experience with events, running one of the largest nightclubs on the island.
Well, viability is not an issue that we consider.
Yeah, it was. This was to do.
It's a question relevant to the licensing objectives.
So, how many people would you be able to operate with, as in numbers, to try and satisfy some of the licensing objectives? So you've already said that you could operate with 60, and that was then withdrawn and then put back to 200. And obviously we're trying to determine what's going to be acceptable for across the table. So is this 60 number of any relevance, or was that something that was just put on the table by Mr. Terry?
Okay, the number 60, most likely, and Graham Orchard might be able to comment on this, comes from the capacity of the fire risk assessment. The number 60, that's where that's come from, because the external fire exit that we used to have going out onto the quay was taken out of the equation, which then meant we only had one fire exit, which gave us a capacity of 60 people. In terms of the offer by Mr. Terry, I don't know if you really want me to go down that sort of avenue
No, you
about
kind
why
of answered
yeah.
what
That-
yeah.
the withdrawal of the offer was for a number of reasons. One, because yes, the offer was withdrawn very quickly. A legal agreement appeared within 24 to 48 hours on Mr. Terry's email, asking him to sign a legal agreement to bound to a capacity of 60. No. So Mr. Terry made the decision to actually put it back to the licensing application.
So
and
was that
that's where the
60?
60 came
Yeah.
from, was the fire.
It wasn't
risk
based
assessment.
on
No.
financial
No.
ability to run.
No,
Okay, I think
not-
we've
that's not
clarified
relevant.
that. As I say, viability is not a matter for us. It's not one of the licensing objectives, but that's, I think, useful clarification on
Yeah.
where that number came from. I just have one question, if we're just mopping up at this point. If I could ask Mr. Power, there's reference in the papers, I think it's paragraph 84, is it, of the original bundle or the main bundle, which refers to environmental health having one recorded complaint, or the last recorded complaint, I should say, in 2017 relating to premises. Is there a history before that which has been alluded to? Is there anything you want to clarify on that figure?
Thank you, Chair. So 2017 is correct. That was the last complaint on record. I understand there was some involvement on behalf of environmental health in 2015. But yeah, 2017, the last complaint. I can make comment if you so wish in terms of subsequent uses thereafter, but that's for you to.
It was really just to clarify the numbers. Thank you very much, everyone who has spoken and everyone who's sitting through this. I know we're at 1 o'clock where normally we would break. We are at the stage now where all the evidence has been received, all questions I think have been asked, and we move to summing up. Now, I'm prepared to carry on, but I'm not sure if other people are.
Yeah.
I think probably the question I'd want to ask Mr. Colvin is of
The
you.
answer is 5 minutes. The answer is 5 minutes.
Really? In that case, I think it might be worthwhile us continuing and hearing the summing up, and then we can retire and combine the retirement to consider matters with lunch. If unless there's any massive objection in any quarter from that, I propose we take that course. Okay. So we do turn to you first, Mr. Colvin, as the other persons, as it says on our sheet, just to hear the summing up. As it says, no new evidence is to be introduced at this stage, and it is literally as the what it says on the tin. If you just sum up the case you wish to put before us.
It's an evidential hearing. I'm going to ask you to make some findings. Firstly, everybody agrees that the building suffers from poor noise insulation. No one has contradicted what I've said. There's no air con, and therefore people are going to want to open the doors. Mr. Puicelli has given uncontested evidence before you. You may say he's an expert, and he's given expert evidence explaining why there will be nuisance. And he's also explained the canyon effect, the reverberation within the alley. But you've just heard this, and I'm not going to go over all of that. And what he has explained is it would need to be a very low-key affair indeed for it not to cause nuisance. And this was borne out rather by Mr. Wilson Smith saying 4 to 5 builders in that alley, you can hear their voices in your home with the windows closed. So we have produced a very clear case, and we ask you to make factual findings based on that case. The applicant has produced no evidence whatsoever, hasn't even produced the applicant as it happens, but no evidence whatsoever, whether at the operating schedule stage or at any other stage. And you're left as a decision-making body to decide where the balance lies on the evidence. The failure to produce evidence or supporting materials, specifically in relating to noise management, is directly contrary to your policy, which says to applicants, this is the sort of stuff we need in order to make decisions. And the way it looks, and I'd rather took what Ms. Wyatt said, which is this will have looked, the optics to a proper commercial premises is the private house is being given essentially carte blanche to come here without any material and say, please find a way to produce some kind of license. Now, Mr. Gosling is not an unreasonable man. The very first words I spoke were, if somebody wants to have a wedding or a party for their child or their anniversary. These are not problems, but they become problems when the intention is you wheel in commercial operators who then want to use that property to build up a business and turn it into an events venue. I have tried, faute de mieux, to produce a set of conditions for you, but I do it with reluctance because we don't have the evidence and you don't have the material which actually says that it is possible to run this building without causing nuisance to neighbours. And without that material, the right thing to do is to refuse and to say to Mr. Terry, if you want to run this properly as a business, you've got to do all the things which are necessary: planning, building regs, fire safety order, licensing, disability, reasonable adjustments, all the things which apply to every other premises in Isle of Wight. You don't get a free pass because you're a very nice man and friend of a number of people in this room, and this is what you've chosen to do. You are bound by the same standards as apply to every other premises. The burden of proof is on the applicant. The applicant has not discharged it, has produced no material at all. And your message, we say, to the applicant should be, look, just go away and reflect on all of this and come back if and when you find yourself able to produce the material which our policy expects you to produce. But if you're against me on all I've just said, please look at those conditions and impose those conditions to at least give a base level minimum protection to neighbours on either side of this building. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much. I'll turn now to responsible authorities. Mr. Power, Mr. Orchards, do you wish to say anything further?
Chairman, just to confirm that the other two parties wish to sum up or not sum up.
I do apologise, yes, Mr. Colvin's been handling everything on that front pretty much, but I should say to those others who spoke, sir, do you want to say anything, or does Ms. White want to say anything in summing up?
No, I think, I'm sure we've all heard enough words. Thank you for the opportunity to put our side of the situation. And I think there's sufficient been said for you to give serious thought to the situation. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And Ms. White?
The same from me. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've not just heard, but really understood what's been said. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Right, back to where I was. Mr. Orchard.
Yeah, all I would say in summing up is subject to a final inspection and the production of the relevant certificates for the fire precautions. I will be satisfied that the regulatory reform fire safety order requirements will be complied with, and therefore that the fire safety is at a satisfactory standard. And just to clarify an earlier point, the doors could remain closed as long as they're supervised and they're opened in the event of the fire alarm sounding. So those doors don't need to be open in my view. I think the risk assessment allows for supervision to mitigate those doors not being open all the time. That's all. Thank you.
Just that I would echo calls in respect of a noise management plan, following my comments that were provided as recommendations at the time of my visit. And the only thing I would do is challenge Mr. Colvin's referral to paragraphs 11.16 and 11.18 of the Statement of Licensing Policy, where there are expectations that noise controls are to be included within the operating schedule. But this is preceded by 11.13, which refers to this being the case in respect to regulated entertainment, which in this application it's not. At the very least, at the same time, I do feel it's necessary to have that noise management plan put forward. And I've given some recommendations on how that can be achieved. That won't be something that environmental health will design. Ultimately, we'll be happy to review it, but we'd expect that to be taken on board by the applicant.
Thank you very much. We now turn back to the applicant and anything you wish to say to us to sum up the case you wish us to consider.
Thank you. So before the hearing concludes, I would like to ask the committee to consider.
Sorry, could I ask again? We're all very old at this end of the room.
I don't think you're much older than me, don't
I think you might have a slightly weaker microphone than us as well, but if you could,
I can lean in. I'll move it closer. I invite the committee to consider the differing relationships that objectors have with the area, including whether they live in Cowes all year round, occupy properties only occasionally, or have other interests in the area. Those views are all valid and deserve to be heard, but they do form part of a wider picture that also includes long-term local residents, local businesses, employees, suppliers, and the wider Cowes community. John Terry has lived at Commodore's house since the 1960s, and his family connection with the property goes back much further still. Over that time, Commodore's house has become known locally and nationally, not only for its history, but also for the events, gatherings, royal visits, and community activities that have taken place there. Mr. Terry is not a property developer. This is not a national hospitality chain. This is a man who has spent most of his life connected to this building and who wants to continue celebrating it responsibly. I would also ask the committee to consider the positive contribution that those events make. Every event supports local businesses, local caterers, musicians, florists, photographers, bar staff, cleaners, suppliers, and contractors all benefit from the activity generated by events at the venue. Those businesses employ local people and contribute to the local economy. The overwhelming majority of objections are from a very small geographical area immediately adjacent to the property. Many licensed premises throughout Cowes operate successfully in close proximity to residential properties. The existence of neighbouring homes does not in itself make licensed activity inappropriate. The question is whether the activity can be managed in a way that promotes the licensing objectives. Cowes is a vibrant and historic waterfront town. It is not a quiet rural hamlet. It is a busy high street location with restaurants, pubs and commercial premises. The property itself sits directly on the waterfront, alongside busy ferry services, marine activity, hospitality businesses, internationally recognised sailing events such as Cowes Week and other commercial activity that has formed part of Cowes' character for generations. This is not a new venue being introduced into a previously untouched location. That does not mean that the neighbours' concerns should be ignored, because they should not, but it does mean that this application should be considered in context of the location in which it sits and the measures that have now been put in place to manage any potential impacts. In reaching its decision, I would respectfully ask the committee to consider not only the concerns that have been expressed, but also the wider public benefit that responsible operation of the venue can continue to provide. Thank you.
thank you very much. And lastly, I turn to our licensing officer, Andrea, to sum up on behalf of the authority.
The applicant states that the majority of their bookings take place between May and September, and that this has been the case since Mr. Terry, the owner of the building, opened the old boat shed for hire over 10 years ago. The decision to apply for a premises licence was made last year in discussions with and based on advice from the licensing team. The grant of a premises licence will permit activities that have been taking place for many years, which have essentially been unregulated in terms of conditions, to continue, but now subject to multiple control measures which are legally enforceable. In respect of concerns raised around public nuisance, since the submission of the application, revisions have been made reducing the proposed operating hours. Regulated entertainment that was originally requested until 23:30 hours has been removed, as has late night refreshment. And I think it's important to note that the 11 p.m. cut-off in respect to the deregulation was established for 3 specific reasons. To align with noise laws, 11 p.m. is legally stipulated as the beginning of night hours and aligns with World Health Organization definitions of nighttime. Preventing public nuisance, 11 p.m. has historically been recognised as the time when background noise levels drop significantly and local residents expect sleep disturbance protection. And to target low-risk events, policymakers intended to exempt everyday grassroots and community activities from bureaucratic licensing, but sought to maintain local authority control over noisy late night events that historically generated antisocial behaviour. If granted, in accordance with the application, all activities will cease at 11 p.m. That is not to say that residents have no remedy if noise nuisance occurs. Should there be evidence at any point in the future of a statutory noise nuisance, then environmental health officers have powers to address these under Environmental Protection Act 1990. The only licensable activity now being sought is the sale of alcohol from 9 a.m. until 11 p.m. each day. It's important to note that the premises will not be operating on a daily or even on a weekly basis at certain periods during the year. The applicant has confirmed that the majority of events take place between May and September, and that the environmental health team have confirmed that the last recorded complaint on their database that relates to Commodore's House was in 2017. The Isle of Wight Council's statement of licensing policy in respect of public nuisance states at 11.12 that the licensing authority is committed to reducing the adverse impact of licensable activities, whilst not unduly restricting the legitimate desire of licensees to provide such activities. Activities involving regulated entertainment or eating and drinking on the premises have the potential to impact adversely on the surrounding area. The impact of noise generated by these activities and customers departing either on foot or in cars can be particularly intrusive at night when ambient level noises are much lower. More strict conditions with regard to noise control will be expected in certain areas of the island which have denser residential accommodation or low levels of background noise, but this will not justify limiting opening hours with regard to the individual merits of any application. We state that the operating schedule must have regard to the nature of the area where the premises are situated, the type of premises concerned, and the activities to be provided, and for the applicant to demonstrate how they will be good neighbours. The premises are situated in the High Street, looking to operate sporadically throughout the year for the sale of alcohol until 11 p.m. Whilst it is not disputed that there are some residents in close proximity, in particular Mr. Gosling and Mr. and Mrs. Wilson-Smith, this is a High Street location, and accordingly there are upwards of 19 on-licensed premises within a 250 metres of Commodore's House. Our policy states that consideration may be given to conditions for the prevention of public nuisance. The applicant in their operating schedule commits to keeping doors and windows closed during entertainment, a dispersal policy including signage and staff encouraging patrons to leave quickly and quietly, and for refuse disposal to be confined to the hours between 8 a.m. and 11 p.m. During the consultation period, along with the removal of regulated entertainment and late night refreshment, the proposed conditions were translated into legally enforceable conditions, and an additional condition prohibiting the removal of drinks to the external area after 10 p.m. was added. It is the view of officers that all reasonable conditions referred to in our statement of licensing policy, given the location and type of the premises, along with the limited hours and activities being applied for, and the limited occasions per year on which the applicant wishes to trade, has satisfactorily addressed the points that we would reasonably expect. In addition, the applicant has confirmed today that they have produced a number of policies, including a noise management policy, a dispersal policy, and a security policy, which they are happy to share with and be scrutinised by the responsible authorities. Any conditions requiring such policies would not take effect until the commencement of licensable activities, and therefore there was no requirement for these to have been produced at the time the application was submitted. Officers accept that this may have assisted interested parties, but it is generally expected that responsible authorities will scrutinise these policies and raise representations or recommend conditions if required. In respect to the prevention of crime and disorder, the Isle of Wight Council statement of licensing policy states that consideration should be given to including the following where appropriate, again after having considered the nature and style of the venue. Our policy goes on to list five things that an applicant could offer, for example, staff training, incident records, refusals logs, provision of door staff, provision of CCTV. In their operating schedule, the applicant offered 4 out of 5 of the suggested conditions. And again, during the consultation period, these were translated into enforceable conditions, and additional conditions were added in terms of the positioning of CCTV, the image, the quality of images, and the retention period. The applicants also confirmed that events will not be managed by agency staff, as this was a concern raised by objectors. All staff members involved in the sale of alcohol will be employed and trained by representatives of the Unknown Bar Company and will no longer take place via a third party. And the police have again confirmed that in the past 3 years, there has only been 1 incident reported to them, which was linked to Commodore's house. Finally, in respect of public safety, Mr. Colvin suggested at paragraph 77, page 16 of his skeleton argument that our requirements have simply been ignored. Our policy states that the applicant must indicate the steps they propose to ensure public safety and lists 15 examples of details and evidence that an applicant should include where appropriate. Of those examples listed, 3 of these are not appropriate to the premises. 6 have been addressed as commitments within the public safety section and the prevention of crime and disorder parts of the operating schedule. And a further 4 are now addressed or are in the process of being addressed in respect of fire safety works that are taking place at the premises. Throughout this process, there's been ongoing dialogue between the applicant, the responsible authorities, and the licensing authority as to the steps being taken to achieve compliance. Mr. Orchard, as the representative of the Fire Authority, is the responsible authority relating to all fire safety matters in this case. Section 182 guidance states, paragraph 9.12, that each responsible authority is an expert in their respective field, and therefore written confirmation from him as and when the works are complete as to his approval of the works undertaken and of the revised risk assessment, along with the certification confirming compliance, is entirely appropriate. And there was no absolute reason, therefore, for the licensing authority to have been provided with a copy of that assessment. Whilst our statement of licensing policy states that information should be provided in respect of the measures being proposed, the guidance makes it clear that licensing conditions should not duplicate other legislation or regulatory controls. Matters relating to electrical safety are already regulated under health and safety legislation, for example, the Electricity at Work regulations. General safety checks are covered by the Health and Safety at Work Act, and fire safety under the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005. These are the primary pieces of legislation in respect of these matters. Nevertheless, the authority has had full regard to the measures proposed. Mr. Colvin suggested the conditions are few in number and light in effect. All in all, the conditions agreed in respect of this application are considerably more stringent than several pubs that operate on the high street 365 days a year, a stone's throw away from Commodore's house. In summary, the application requests authorisation for the sale of alcohol to take place between 9 AM and 11 PM each day from premises that have been doing so for over 10 years under temporary event notices without history of concern or incident reported to the authorities. The grant of a premises licence will ensure stricter controls by way of enforceable conditions that have never before been attached to any previous authorisation. Additionally, the Licensing Act contains provisions whereby an interested party can apply for a review of a licence at any time if there is evidence to suggest that one or more of the licensing objectives are being undermined. Members are also reminded that the applicant may still apply for temporary event notices. These will not be subject to any of the proposed or agreed conditions or restrictions should a licence be refused. The authority's determination should be evidence-based, justified as being appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and proportionate to what it is intended to achieve. It remains the recommendation of the licensing department that option 2 is appropriate, to grant the licence as per the application with any modifications to the proposed hours and/or additional conditions that the subcommittee deem reasonable and proportionate to promote the licensing objectives. If minded to grant, officers recommend that the noise management plan should be approved by environmental health team, along with a requirement for a privacy screen to be installed between Commodore's house and Mr. Gosling's property in order to prevent overlooking and to attenuate noise. Thank you.
May I comment on that briefly?
It's not usually our practice
No,
to
but
allow
from
people
a,
to speak.
from a
further.
legal perspective, I think it just might help.
If there's a comment you feel is necessary, yes.
I do honestly think it's necessary, but I'll be very quick. What you've just seen was a very powerful speech in favour of grant on particular terms. I've never seen that happen before in any licence application anywhere in the country. If a licensing authority wants to make a representation, it can make a representation and it participates as a party. Its representation is made within the statutory time frame, which is 28 days, and then all the other parties have an opportunity to comment on it. What Ms. Bull has done is to make a speech at the end of the hearing, which I can't comment on, and that is fundamentally unfair. The protection is that you are the decision makers, and you will act on the evidence which you have heard. And what Ms. Bull has put before you is not evidence. What Mr. Fumicelli has put before you is evidence. What Mr. Wilson-Smith has put before you is evidence. And very briefly, obviously, Mr. Fumicelli, Ms. Bull could not comment on the expert evidence which you have received from Mr. Fumicelli. She said nothing at all about it. That is the evidence in the case. And what she offers you is the suggestion that one day a noise management report will be produced and signed off, and it will never see the public light of day. So my client will not have the opportunity to comment on it. You will not have the opportunity to consider it and comment on it, and nor Mr. Fumicelli. And that is a complete perversion of how licensing is supposed to operate in this country. I don't know what happens, how it happens, whether there are local practices here, but in this particular case, that produces a stinging unfairness to Mr. Gosling, who's taken assiduous care to cooperate with the process, to file evidence, to say he was going to file evidence and do that, to bring along expert material, and then to see it sideswiped at the end. Oh, you know, really all this is nonsense, you must grant according to our recommendation. Produces great unfairness to Mr. Gosling, and I hope that you're going to consider the evidence in the case and consider whether, in fact, you have been satisfied that in respect of what has been placed before you, this premises can operate without harm to the licensing objectives. So I'm looking to you to apply the protection, which does not seem to be applied from over there. It needs to be applied from over here. I regret to put it so strongly, that what you have just heard is not appropriate.
Chair, is that the last of summaries? Because
We have now summed up the case, the opportunity to give evidence, and it is evidence we decide this matter on, was given to all parties and questions were allowed to all parties. We concluded that process. All we have just heard is summing up, no more than that. I can assure Mr. Colvin, indeed all parties, that we will determine us on the evidence that was heard during that part of the hearing. We will now retire. It is the practice of this committee to try and reach a decision on the day. Technically, we have 5 days to notify of decision, but I believe my colleagues would be happy to retire now. I'm conscious that we have strayed into the lunch hour quite significantly. I don't know how long it is going to take us to consider this matter. I will say provisionally we shall reconvene at 2:30. 2:30, that will give people an opportunity to have a break, some refreshment, and for us to consider matters. We may need longer than that, I don't know. But if we provisionally say that we will reconvene in this room at 2:30, and then we will see where we stand and whether more time is needed, or indeed we do need to take a little bit longer than today to reach a decision.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your forbearance in this hearing. It's been quite a long one, but we shall reconvene in due course, hopefully with a decision. Thank you very much.